Hi, everyone. Welcome to NiceGamLii Chanel. If you find this content interesting or helpful, please don't forget to like, subscribe, and hit the notification bell so you won't miss any new videos. Your support means so much to me, and it helps me create even better content. Thank you so much.
The young lady from the wealthy circle received a package. Her close best friend helped her open it. Oh my God, where did all this cheap street market stuff come from? She held up a pair of counterfeit Puxian AJ shoes. When Qianyu saw that pile of items, her expression suddenly changed. She collapsed onto the chair. Her hands holding the documents started to tremble. Her best friend spoke up. Sis, are you okay? Did it sting your eyes? I'll ask the assistant to throw it away right now. When Qianyu stared at the pile of junk, her eyes turned red. Don't throw it away. He found out. He doesn't want me anymore. When Qianyu never had the heart to tell her best friend, that pile of things was all the gifts she had given to her boyfriend over the past 3 years. The most expensive item inside was probably that bottle of perfume. It was a free gift when she purchased custom-made clothes. He hid his identity as a wealthy heiress while dating me. For 3 years, he lived two completely different lives. In front of me, he was a poor girl who couldn't even afford a $10 bowl of ramen. But when I wasn't around, he would casually spend tens of thousands on treating others to a meal. He watched me struggle to pay off his debts, working 2 jobs at the same time, eating $5 instant noodles, carrying 50-pound water barrels. He had thought about telling me the truth, about letting me live a worry-free life. But every time he was about to say it, he hesitated. What if my love for him changed? What if I became like other guys, clinging to him? And so he delayed it, again and again, until today. At the mall, I saw him picking out clothes for another guy, carefully choosing piece by piece for him to try on. I never knew when Qianyu was this patient. Before, he never bought anything at the mall. He would always just glance from the entrance. I knew the mall was expensive, but I still wanted to go in sometimes, just looking, not buying. But I was timid, afraid others would see my lack of money. Later, when Qianyu had a stable job and a decent income, one suggested a few times that we go inside. But every time I brought it up, he changed the subject. Over time, I realized he didn't want to go. Today, my friend asked me to stop by this mall to pick up a watch he had sent in for maintenance. I had just collected the watch when I turned and saw Wen Qianyu with that guy. Then, when Qianyu carefully picked out clothes for him, gently helping him put them on, he was smiling so happily. I felt numb. I could only stand there stiffly, watching Wen Qianyu from afar, trying to find even the slightest hint that it was all a misunderstanding. But all I saw was that the guy just tried on the clothes and gave up. Then, when Qianyu casually waved his hand, swiped his card, and bought everything, so that guy ended up with a whole pile of clothes. The sales assistant beside me whispered in surprise, "That's over 100,000. Over 100,000. Great." We had been together for 3 years. The most expensive thing he ever bought me was only 100 yuan. Recently, my job delayed my salary for a few days. I had no money on my meal card for 2 whole days. Only when he noticed did he top up 100 yuan for me. And yet, he so easily spent over 100,000 on things he once called superficial luxuries. My eyes stung. I didn't want to look at that prince and princess anymore. I turned and walked out of the mall. I went to stops away at the market to buy groceries. At 9:30 p.m., I heard the key turning in the lock. When Qianyu opened the door and switched on the light, he changed into slippers and walked a few steps before he noticed me lying on the sofa. "Why are you so quiet?" I gathered my thoughts and responded calmly. "Why are you so late? I've been waiting for you for so long." When Qianyu paused while taking off his coat, then, as if nothing happened, he casually explained that his flight was delayed. Suddenly, I felt that maybe, in the past, it wasn't really flight delays like he said. He was just with someone else. I stopped my thoughts and didn't ask more. I told him to wash his hands and get ready for dinner. When Qianyu, somewhat accommodating, said, "I already ate on the plane." After saying that, he seemed worried I'd be upset and quickly added, "But I'd love to have some of your soup." I smelled it when I walked in. It must be delicious. In the past, I would have rushed to serve him a bowl. I would have prepared everything neatly and handed it to him. But this time, I didn't move. I opened the suitcase and started sorting his dirty clothes. I didn't even lift my eyelids. "The soup is in the kitchen. Help yourself." when Keanu stood beside me as I unpacked his luggage. Surprisingly, he didn't complain. Instead, he got up and went to serve himself. When he usually had soup, he liked to add lots of cilantro and chopped scallions. Normally, I would carefully chop them and put them in a small bowl for him. But today, all the vegetables were still in the bag, untouched. The cilantro stems were still covered with traces of chicken broth. The soup had been perfectly simmered. It was rich and thick, yet not greasy. Unfortunately, it was cold. When Keanu instantly lost his appetite, he had already eaten a lot today. Now, looking at it, all he felt was disgust. He turned and poured himself a glass of water. Then he went to the bedroom to find me. But on the coffee table, he saw a shopping bag, a sleek black paper bag, only a white brand logo on it. It was from a top-tier jewelry brand. Even the cheapest item cost tens of thousands. When Keanu's heart sank, he picked up the bag and opened it. Inside lay an exquisite watch. It looked expensive. I walked out of the bedroom, still holding his dirty laundry in my arms. Seeing Wen Qianyu holding my friend's watch box, I instinctively wanted to explain, but in my mind, the image of him with that guy flashed through. The words on my lips were swallowed back. Instead, I asked, "You think it's nice?" "I think this watch is beautiful." When Qianyu's brows furrowed deeply, his gaze towards me grew colder. He didn't even ask who gave me the watch. His accusing look alone told me that I didn't deserve to wear something so expensive. He frowned at me, questioning, "How could you take someone else's belongings? If you keep doing this, people will see you for what you are. This is something valuable. Return it to them immediately." He looked at me like I was some kept boy, someone obsessed with money. I smiled and didn't explain. Instead, I said, "It's a birthday gift from a friend. They're not trying to pursue me. Why should I return it? So, if I take a gift, it means people will judge me. But when you bought all those things for that guy, you weren't afraid of people judging him?" Thinking of that, I glanced at him. "If you want soup, heat it up yourself. I saved some food for you, but it's too late now. I have to go back to school." After saying that, I took the watch from his hands. I placed it back in the box. As I reached the door, I stopped. Then I explained, "The other watch belongs to my roommate. I'm just bringing it back for him." When Qianyu realized he had misunderstood me, he quickly chased after me, saying, "Jiangshun, I wasn't doubting you." After saying that, he grabbed my arm, trying to pull me back inside. His tone softened. "I just got back from abroad. I'm exhausted. It wasn't that I was upset with you, but you shouldn't have misled me on purpose. I'm sorry. We haven't seen each other for so long. Let's not fight, okay?" I didn't respond, but my attitude softened. I let him pull me back inside, as if I didn't care at all about his earlier accusations. Returning home is not tiring. What's tiring is spending the whole day shopping with the new boyfriend. Seeing that I wasn't angry, when Qianyu finally felt relieved and pulled me towards the bedroom, "I brought you a gift from Paris. You will definitely like it." I followed behind without saying a word. Just now, while I was organizing things, I saw a luxury brand green box inside the suitcase. Inside was a tie. I opened it and took a look. Without touching the tie, I put it back exactly where it was, because I wasn't sure if it was meant for me. What if it was something the new boyfriend forgot to take? But now, I'm sure the tie is for me. Something bought in France must be worth some money. Does this mean my status has improved? I followed him into the bedroom. When Qianla rummaged through the suitcase, from the pile of clothes, he pulled out an inconspicuous black box. Smiling, he handed it to me. "Happy birthday." The box was small and exquisite. I looked at the little box, but what I saw in front of me was my own heart, being silently slashed open by Wen Qianyu's smile today. The box with the belt inside was still sitting steadily in the suitcase, not covered at all. It openly displayed its expensive value to me. I smiled with difficulty. My heart was bitter beyond words. "Thank you." Guessing it should be a bottle of perfume or something similar. The brand was from the same counter where I ran into Wen Qianla this afternoon. Should I be grateful to Wen Qianla for still remembering me while accompanying someone else? Or should I feel sad that I didn't even get a tie? When Qianyu saw that I wasn't very happy, this bottle of perfume was specially chosen by me. French perfumes are very famous. Try it first. If you like it, I'll bring you a different scent next time. I don't wear perfume. I can't stand the smell. But when Qianyu clearly knew, yet he still gave me a bottle of it. "Thank you. I need to go back to school now. It's getting late." After saying that, I turned around wanting to leave this house. I felt suffocated here, almost breathless. My birthday was over. I was lucky to catch the last bus. When I got back to the dorm at night, it was already past 10. I accepted the bottle of perfume. I didn't want to be entangled with Wen Qianyu anymore. I insisted on returning to school. I had no plans to stay over tonight. Wen Qianyu wanted to take me back, but I used the excuse that he was tired from his business trip. Told him to get some rest. He still had work tomorrow. There were 4 of us in the dorm. At that moment, none of my roommates had gone to bed yet. They called out to me. My roommate Lin Feng chuckled meaningfully. This doesn't seem right. It's your birthday today. Your girlfriend just happened to return today. It should be a passionate, romantic moment. Why did you come back? Curfew is at 11. If I didn't come back, where else would I stay? As I spoke, I took out a bag containing a watch. Song Mingyu, this is your watch. Check if there's anything wrong with it. I handed the bag to Song Mingyu. He opened it, took a look, then casually tossed it onto his desk. Luo Hao looked at me with a grin. By the way, what birthday gift did your girlfriend bring you from France? Don't hide it. Let us take a look too. I placed a black paper box on the table. There, this. After saying that, I turned to the balcony and started gathering the clothes I had dried today. Lin Feng was the most impatient. He directly opened the box. Inside was a delicate glass bottle. A faint fragrance drifted out. Perfume. She got you perfume? But you don't even use perfume. Luo Hao was also a bit puzzled, coming back from the fashion capital and only bringing a bottle of perfume. Luo Hao and Song Mingyu exchanged glances. Song Mingyu picked up the perfume and unwrapped it. He sprayed it into the air. The scent wasn't strong, but it wasn't something a guy like me would use. Song Mingyu calmly placed the perfume back. He picked up the packaging box and flipped it over. At the bottom of the box, there were tiny glue residues, a sign that a label had been peeled off. Song Mingyu frowned and tossed the box back onto the table. Someone like you can't afford good things. You might as well just keep it for yourself to look at. Don't spray it and embarrass yourself. A loser like you doesn't deserve such fine perfume. Lin Feng couldn't stand it. How can you talk like that? Luo Hao nodded in agreement. He also thought Song Mingyu had gone too far. Song Mingyu looked completely indifferent. He sneered, I'm just stating the facts. If you don't deserve good things, don't force it. Otherwise, people will see right through you. Lin Feng was about to argue back, but Luo Hao held him back. Song Mingyu's family was wealthy, and he had a blunt personality. He never cared about saving face for others. I don't really care about his sarcasm. I smiled faintly and spoke calmly. Wearing a cotton t-shirt worth only a few bucks. I truly don't deserve such fine perfume. Besides, I never use perfume. Lin Feng and Luo Hao wanted to speak up for me, but I shook my head. It wasn't the first time Song Mingyu said I was unworthy, but today, I felt that he was right. On the bus ride back, I looked up Wen Qianyu online. The tie in the suitcase, a classic model from a well-known brand, but it wasn't meant for me. Most likely, it was bought for that guy, and that guy simply forgot to take it. I lay back on my bed. The bottle of perfume was placed beside my pillow. Frosted glass with elegant floral patterns. Not too big, but exuding refinement in every detail. Song Mingyu was right. I don't deserve it. When Qianyu can wear all designer brands, go shopping with a guy, casually spend 100,000 yuan with a wave of the hand, without even blinking. And when he returns home to see me, I am already dressed in a plain work uniform worth a few hundred yuan. Everything about him reveals his true world. I am only worthy of seeing him in work clothes, only worthy of the chaos of a street market, haggling over to yuan, completely unworthy of a tie worth thousands. Then how much is this bottle of perfume worth? I don't know. The images from the afternoon refused to fade from my mind. I checked my phone, WeChat. Not a single message. Wen Qianyu, he didn't even ask if I got back to the dorm safely. The clock reset to 0 past midnight. My birthday was erased too. Maybe Wen Qianyu will be erased too. I woke up at 9 a.m. Class at 10 a.m. At noon, I received birthday gifts from Lin Feng and Luo Hao, a razor and a new hoodie. Yesterday, I left early. Wasn't in the dorm, so I only got their gifts today. They weren't expensive, but practical for me. I really liked them. No classes in the afternoon. I studied in the library all day. My phone was completely silent. There was no call from Wen Qianyu. I didn't contact Wen Qianyu, nor did I even think of him. It was as if what happened yesterday didn't exist. In the past, when I couldn't answer the phone during class, he would come straight to the classroom to find me. But now, after a whole night and day, not even a single message. In the evening, the 4 of us in the dormitory ate some candy together. Song Mingyu picked and chose complaining that the cafeteria food was tasteless. The ribs barely had any meat on them. He suggested going to the mall tomorrow for a good meal. Normally, when my roommates planned a meal, I had to skip it because of my part-time job. But today, looking at the perfume on my desk, for the first time, I nodded and agreed to go. Early the next morning, we took the bus to the city for fun. The restaurant Song Ming-yu suggested was conveniently located on the 6th floor of the mall. The price and taste matched his extravagant lifestyle. Before eating, they went to the phone store to browse. I took the opportunity to visit the boutique where Wen Qianyu had taken that guy before. The perfume he gave me yesterday was from this brand. Coincidentally, the same sales lady was there. She greeted me with a warm smile, showing no reaction to my worn-out jeans and sneakers. This brand had many perfumes. I couldn't find the one he gave me. I also didn't know how to describe it. For a moment, I felt completely lost. Song Ming-yu came over but didn't even glance at me. He casually picked out an outfit and tried it on. He seemed very satisfied. "I'll take all these clothes," he said, then added, "and give me one of your latest perfumes." He lifted his head, looking down at me with a condescending gaze. He sneered at me in disgust, as if mocking my awkwardness. The sales lady smiled apologetically at me while packing up his clothes. She politely explained, "Sorry, sir, but we haven't received any new perfumes recently. Are you sure you didn't mistake it for another brand? Are you sure you didn't get it wrong?" Song Ming-yu frowned. "Impossible. I've seen it. It's a black box. It even has floral patterns on it." The sales lady suddenly understood. She explained, "Sir, the one you're talking about is a promotional gift. When a member accumulates 100,000 points, they receive a free bottle of perfume. Moreover, this perfume was specially designed for the domestic market. It is only available here. It is not sold abroad." As she spoke, there was even a hint of pride in her tone. Song Ming-yu suddenly realized, oh, no wonder. Check how many points I have now. With that, he asked the sales assistant to check his points. I was left standing there alone, frozen in place. When Qianyu had gone to France, he returned on my birthday. To impress that guy while shopping, he gave me a promotional gift as a birthday present, and he lied, saying it was brought back from France. He didn't even bother to pick out a real gift for me in France. So in the end, all I was worth was a freebie. As the sales assistant checked the points, Song Ming-yu continued chatting with her. "Wow, I'm still far behind. My friend is going to laugh at me for ages. This is embarrassing." Realizing he didn't have enough points to redeem it, Song Ming-yu seemed a little disappointed. He hesitated and asked, "Can you check my friend? When? How many points does he have? I need to work hard. I have to surpass him." Wanting to maintain Song Ming-yu as a new customer, the sales assistant whispered, "Ms. Wen Qianyu has currently spent 1,100,000 yuan. 1.1 for million. That was an amount I couldn't even fathom. In my hometown, that money could buy a very nice house." I just felt ridiculous. A few years ago, when Qianyu was in a car accident and seriously injured. Back then, things were bad. There were some medical debts. When we were together, I often worked part-time jobs to help pay off those debts. I worked to extra jobs, using one meal card to support both of us. Later, when his situation improved, without me knowing, he spent over 1 million on clothes for someone else. His earliest purchases were for years ago, and he never stopped spending since. I used my meal card to support him, while he had the money to spend tens of thousands on someone else. I was simply a fool. Now, I finally realized that during those years with Wen Qianyu, the reason our living conditions never improved was because of this. Song Ming-yu paid, grabbed his shopping bags, and left. He pretended not to know me the entire time. I didn't mind at all and followed behind him. When we reached a resting area, he tossed one of the shopping bags at me. He glared at me, "Take it. Don't misunderstand. They both gave you a birthday present. If you end up being left out because I didn't give you one, that'd be a shame. I can afford this. Don't say I'm looking down on you. That brand's gift boxes always have a label on the bottom. The bottom of your perfume box had a bit of glue. Anyone who knows would suspect it was a freebie." Song Ming-yu scoffed, curling his lips. "Only a clueless country bumpkin like you wouldn't realize. You just bury your head and work all the time, spending your hard-earned money to support someone else. And yet, you still got played." His words were harsh, but he wasn't wrong. I gave a bitter smile, so Song Ming-yu had already suspected it. That's why he asked about the perfume. That's why he helped me check Wen Qianyu's points and spending history. I knew he wasn't a bad person. I nodded at him. Thank you. Forget it, just think of it as charity work. Song Mingyu waved it off, as if afraid I'd take it too seriously and try to repay him. Then he got up to find Lin Feng and the others. By the time we finished eating and returned to school, it was already dinner time. Originally, we had planned to eat dinner before heading back, but I had to work the night shift at 11 p.m. Only then did I start thinking about Wen Qianyu. I felt sad, but when I thought about my future, how I wouldn't have to be upset over things like this anymore. A new hope ignited, no longer having to support someone else. The money iron would be enough to make my life easier. Wen Qianyu must have gone out with his new boyfriend. Feeling insecure was never part of my nature. The West Gate was the closest to the night market. By evening, it was bustling with people, especially couples. Wen Qianyu was standing just outside the West Gate, watching as we walked toward him. Jiangshun and Wen Qianyu greeted each other. After not seeing me for 2 days, he looked like he was in a good mood. The unpleasantness from that day seemed to have faded. Wen Qianyu finally relaxed a little. Song Mingyu was the first to notice Wen Qianyu. He nudged me with his shoulder, signaling for me to look in Wen Qianyu's direction. Then he handed me the shopping bag he had given me earlier, and followed Lin Feng and Luo Hao inside. The three of them never once greeted Wen Qianyu, as if they didn't even know him. Wen Qianyu did the same. Lin Feng and Luo Hao also ignored him. I had never properly introduced Wen Qianyu to them. Several times, I had invited Wen Qianyu to eat with us. He always made excuses, saying he was busy. They didn't care about a meal together either. So now, pretending not to know him was for the best. After being hit by the truth about that perfume today, I had impulsively bought myself several pieces of clothing in the afternoon. Without any guilt, I walked toward Wen Qianyu. No matter if he called me wasteful or said I didn't know how to manage money, I now had enough confidence to face him. When he saw me approach, Wen Qianyu smiled. His expression was gentle as he took the shopping bags from me. He didn't seem the least bit upset that I had spent money. Why didn't you answer my call? I was worried about you for so long. I took out my phone. At 3 p.m., there was a WeChat message from Wen Qianyu asking what I was doing, saying he wanted to eat my cooking. I didn't reply. Shortly after, a few calls came in. My phone was on silent, so I didn't notice. At that time, I was in the mall asking about the perfume, but I didn't say that directly. I was out shopping with my roommates. Why are you working again? I have an income now. Didn't I say I'd take care of you? After Wen Qianyu got a promotion, he felt bad about how hard I had worked before. He was worried I'd neglect my studies, so he didn't let me take part-time jobs in my free time. For the past 6 months, I had really focused on my studies, improving my major courses. I shook my head and said, "It's fine. It's just a night shift. For hours for 200 yuan. That's 6,000 yuan a month. I think the pay is decent." I mentally calculated the gap between 6,000 and 100,000. Even with 6,000 yuan per month, I still couldn't afford the cheapest shirt from that brand. When Qianyu noticed something was off. "Is the allowance I gave you not enough? I'll give you more." I waved my hand. "No, it's enough for daily expenses." Among university couples, it was rare for the girlfriend to even provide living expenses. The fact that he thought about giving me money was already rare. But the money he gave was only enough for my meals and groceries for his meals. Not even an extra yuan for me to buy anything for myself. I had gotten used to not admitting I was broke. So, when Qianyu assumed what he gave me was enough, and so, for a while, I lived off him. My savings had almost run out. And after these past 2 days of seeing the 100,000 yuan difference, I decided to start working again. Early the next morning, I called the 24-hour convenience store where I used to work. It just so happened they needed a night shift cashier, so I agreed. Tonight was my first night shift. It would be tough. It might interfere with my studies. Listen to me. Don't go. When Qianyu did care about me. Before, when I worked part-time, it was to support him and pay off his debts. I worked extra jobs every day. At one point, I was so exhausted that I fainted. I shook my head. I've finished all my courses. I have free time anyway. Might as well do something. Besides, I already promised them I'd go. I can't back out now. By mid-June, the school will have its official recruitment fair. I need to save up some money for myself. It'll help me look more presentable for job applications. When Qianyu asked, "Is it because you went shopping today? Your roommates bought those things, and now you want to stop looking like a poor little brother?" He knew men's fashion inside and out. Just one glance, and he could tell the difference between me and my roommates. Not to mention that judgmental look in his eyes. It was as if his disdain for me ran deep in his bones. In the past, I would have immediately refuted him, said I didn't care, and I truly didn't. I knew my place. I never longed for things I couldn't have, but this time, I didn't argue. I tightened my grip on the birthday gift I received at noon. Casually, I took out the new shirt, held it up against myself as if checking the fit, and asked him, I went to the mall today. The sales assistant said this shirt suits me perfectly. What do you think? Does it look good? There were so many clothes I liked there. I want to work another job, so I can at least afford a few pieces from that brand. When Kianyu's expression stiffened when he saw the brand. Yesterday, he had spent the whole day shopping for clothes with his brother. In the end, he bought everything for his brother before going home. Thinking of that, he immediately said, if you like these things, buy them and I'll reimburse you. Just put your things back first. I'll stay with you during your shift tonight. Tomorrow, you need to tell them clearly that you're quitting. I didn't answer. Bitterness filled my heart. Of course, there was a difference. With his new boyfriend, he was patient, taking the time to go shopping and try on clothes together. But with me, it was just buy them and I'll reimburse you. I wanted to ask, if I buy 100,000 worth, will you reimburse that too? But I didn't ask. My dignity stopped me. Kianyu was actually very good to me. He could do everything a girlfriend was supposed to do. Like now, there were customers in the convenience store. It was when Kianyu who was handling the cashier. I was assigned to sit on a chair on the side and study. After sending the customers off, he turned around and saw me in a daze. Thinking I was struggling with my studies, he crouched down in front of me and asked, what's wrong? Which part don't you understand? He told me he had been a top student in school. Sometimes, when I couldn't figure out a theory, when Kianyu would help me sort out the key concepts, I slowly turned to him, looking at his real face in front of me. Then I asked, will we break up? I wanted to ask who that guy was. But what came out was this. Deep down, I still held on to a final bit of hope for him. Hearing this when Kianyu cupped my chin, gave me a quick kiss on the lips, and said, don't overthink it. We will never break up. I wanted to ask, then what about your new boyfriend? But as the words reached my lips, I swallowed them again. At 6 a.m., my shift ended. We bought some breakfast on the way home. Back at the rented apartment, I wasn't hungry, but was exhausted. I collapsed into bed and fell asleep when Kianyu had some business to handle. By the time he finished, it was already 10 a.m. He returned to the bedroom. My eyes were tightly shut, and I was in a deep sleep when Kianyu knew something was on my mind. It must have been related to yesterday's shopping trip, but he wasn't ready to remove his mask just yet. So he let me stay in my struggles a little longer. After all, I had been poor since the day I was born. I was woken up by Wing Kianyu. It was 1 p.m. When Kianyu was hungry. He didn't like eating out. Whenever he was home, I was always the one cooking. But today, I took out my phone and ordered takeout. I'm too tired. I have another shift tonight. Let's just eat takeout. When Kianyu frowned, you're still going. Didn't we agree you wouldn't go tonight? I shook my head. We never agreed. I never promised. When Kianyu frowned as he looked at me. No, this will affect your studies. Suddenly, he seemed to recall the clothes from yesterday's shopping trip. Is it because you want those clothes? Let's go buy them this afternoon. But you are not allowed to work anymore. I was stunned. I hadn't expected him to know. That realization made me feel even more bitter. No, I don't want them. And I won't go to work tonight either. I didn't want to argue over these things anymore. The more we talked, the more I would learn. When Kianyu understood everything, yet he still pretended not to know in front of me, seeing that I had stopped insisting. He finally seemed satisfied. He knew that once I agreed, I wouldn't go back to working. Jiang-chun, I know you've endured a lot for me these past 2 years. How about this? In 2 months, you'll be a senior and won't have any more classes. Move out and live with me. I'll make it up to you, little by little. I was a bit surprised. Living together. Wouldn't that mean he wouldn't have time to see his new boyfriend? Then he added, next Friday, I'll pick you up. On Saturday, let's go look at cars. From now on, whenever I have free time, I'll take you on trips. These were plans he hadn't intended to tell me. But sensing how off I had been today, he panicked and said everything to keep me stable. A car. I was surprised, but then I felt foolish. Even if he gave me one, what was there to be happy about if he bought another for someone else? In the end, it was something he had already decided. It had nothing to do with me. For all I knew, this car purchase had been planned together with someone else. After lunch, I called the convenience store owner to apologize. He didn't say much and simply agreed Then I went back to the bedroom to continue sleeping. When I woke up again, it was already 7 p.m. No one had been sleeping beside me for a long time. We often shared the same bed and pillow, but our intimacy only stopped at hugging. There were barely any kisses or other affectionate acts. I got up and walked out of the bedroom. Outside, it was pitch dark. Only the study room was lit. I went back to the bedroom and packed up my things. Then, I knocked on the door to tell Wen Qianyu I was leaving. There was no response for a long time. I pushed the door open. The study was empty. A bookshelf filled an entire wall of the small room. It was packed with his books. Most of them were related to his university major. Right next to it was an old wooden desk. Wen Qianyu's laptop screen was still on. It hadn't gone into screensaver mode, which meant he had just been using it. On the screen, there was a car introduction. All I saw was the logo with 2 interlocked rings. Below, the price was over 8 million. Seeing this number didn't make me feel anything. I didn't have 8 million anyway. My eyes were drawn to a photo frame next to the laptop. A wooden frame. Inside wasn't a picture of me and Wen Qianyu, but of another man. The photo had a vintage, yellowed look. The man in the picture wore a black suit. His hair was neatly combed. His eyes carried warmth, a mix of gentleness and determination. There were no excessive decorations, but on his hand he wore a gold watch. That watch looked familiar. I didn't think too much. I put the frame down, then got up and left. Wen Qianyu wasn't there. It didn't seem right to mess with his study without permission. I left him a note and then stepped out. The old building's sensor lights were dim yellow. I quietly waited for the elevator. The hallway was silent. I vaguely heard Wen Qianyu's voice coming from the back staircase. I couldn't help but move closer. His voice became clearer. "I've picked the car for you. We'll get it next week. I'll find you another driver for pickup and drop off. When you go to college, we'll get a new car. My little young master, please don't be mad at me anymore, okay? I haven't been sleeping well these past 2 days." His voice was soft and gentle on the phone. It was a tenderness I had never heard before. And yet, he's still just a high school student. He is really so patient. I remained expressionless. Numbly, I stepped into the elevator and left. I rode in an 8 million yuan car. After soothing Wen Xiaozi, Wen Qianyu let out a sigh of relief. Ever since that day, when Wen Xiaozi found out his sister had a boyfriend, he had been wanting to meet him. But Wen Qianyu didn't know how to explain it to me. He returned to his house. On the table was a note I had left. "I have class tomorrow. I must go back to school today." Wen Qianyu nodded. He tossed the note into the trash bin. A boyfriend should be this sensible and obedient. No need for excessive care and attention. No need for chauffeured rides. That way, he has more time to focus on his work. When Qianyu stretched and returned to his study to pack his things, he picked up his phone and called me. When I didn't answer, he sent me a voice message on WeChat. First, he asked why I didn't wait for him to come back. Then, he reminded me to be safe on my way back. After changing into a different outfit, when he stepped out, he was no longer that impoverished girl, but rather, the renowned Yang Group's general manager. The eldest daughter of the Wen family, Wen Qianyu. After arriving at school, I sent Wen Qianyu a WeChat message. Meanwhile, on the other side, Wen Qianyu had already arrived at a private club. After exchanging goodnight messages in the parking lot, he turned off his old phone. Then, he picked up the latest model from the car. Our dear Qianyu finally made an appearance. "Why didn't you bring your boyfriend along this time?" His best friend, Yang Mengting, arranged to meet up today. She specifically said he could bring his significant other. Yet Qianyu still came alone, so she jokingly asked him. But when Qianyu ignored her, Yang Mengting turned to another friend, Shen Qiao, and asked, "Shen Qiao, you must have seen him, right? What does Yuji's boyfriend look like?" Shen Qiao shook his head. Glancing at the silent Wen Qianyu, he said, "I haven't seen him either, but I heard that your mother is back from abroad." When Qianyu nodded slightly, he took a sip of his drink. Shen Qiao continued, "When do you plan to tell your boyfriend? You won't be able to keep it a secret for much longer. Your mother has already started asking around, looking for a suitor for you. At Wen Qianyu's age, it's the perfect time for dating. Nobody knows about him and me. But my mom is anxious to set him up with someone." Just thinking about it annoyed Wen Qianyu. He had known for a while that his mother was planning blind dates for him. Now, there was no way to keep Jiang Sheng hidden. If he didn't tell them about Jiang Sheng soon, he would be forced into a blind date. He recalled how, when he went to organize his laptop, he noticed that the picture frame on the desk had been moved. That gave Qianyu a clear answer. Jiang Sheng must have seen the photo. If he were truly sensible, he would obediently return what didn't belong to him. Then he would sincerely apologize. If he did, when Qianyu would cherish him even more than his younger brother, he would give him everything. But if he refused, then he would have nothing, including a proper title. Shen Qiao asked no further. He knew when Qianyu's temperament. It was just past midnight. Before heading home, Qianyu was dropped off at a luxury apartment near the company. He was slightly tipsy. He slowly made his way upstairs. This apartment complex was developed by his family's real estate company. During the weekdays, he usually didn't go back to the old house because I wouldn't take the initiative to go there unless it was the weekend and he called me over. Outside of that, he lived here. When he reached the bedroom, he didn't have the energy to shower. He lay down on the bed and closed his eyes to rest. He suddenly wanted to drink the soup I made. In a daze, the image of me carrying shopping bags appeared before his eyes again. When Qianyu instantly lost all sleepiness, she got up and went to the dressing room to get clothes. The dressing room was spacious. His clothes ranged from everyday essentials to custom-made limited edition business attire. The range was vast, and the collection was complete. He used to get off work first, change into casual clothes here before meeting me. He placed the limited edition bracelet in the glass cabinet. Next to it, a box contained a matching men's watch. The exquisite design on the watch face made it dazzling enough to make onlookers squint. Both the design and the price met the highest standards of luxury in the upper-class circle. When Qianyu picked up the men's watch and examined it in her hand, this was the birthday gift he brought back for me from France this year. At that time, when Xiaozhe had his eye on a high-end men's watch, the first thing that came to his mind was my wrist. So he bought me the same series. Its price was 10 times higher than when Xiaozhe's watch. He knew I couldn't tell any brand apart. As long as he told me it was a street stall knockoff, I would believe it, but he never showed up in front of me. Since we got together, he could control how much I spent on him. Thinking about when Xiaozhe calling him stingy before. When Qianyu let out a sarcastic laugh, she closed the box, walked to the hidden safe in the dressing room, and tossed the watch inside. When Qianyu showed no regret, she got up and went to the study. A framed old photograph was also placed on the desk there. It was identical to the one in the old house, but this one was the original, held in Wen Qianyu's hand. On the young man's wrist was a gold watch, engraved with a phoenix pattern. It was an old-fashioned design. The young man in the photograph was his grandfather. When he was young, his parents were busy with work, so he lived with his grandfather. In my memory, Grandpa always wore that watch. He would tell me stories from the past. He said that back then, they were poor. He had to support Grandma and her family. Later, Grandma spent all her savings, and in her lifetime, she only bought that one gold watch. As a gift for Grandpa, Grandma passed away early. Grandpa would often sit with the watch, staring at it all afternoon. He would murmur Grandma's name under his breath. That kind of love from the past made Wen Qianyu both yearn for and become obsessed with it. Later, when Grandpa became seriously ill, his younger brother, being playful, accidentally broke Grandpa's watch. He didn't dare let Grandpa know, so he secretly took it for repairs. Just as the repairs were finished, bad news came from Grandpa's side. He took the watch and walked along a shortcut, but the car was too fast and crashed into a roadside wall. He was in a coma for nearly a month. In the end, he never got to see Grandpa one last time. The watch was also lost. It was never there to accompany Grandpa in his final days, nor was it there for his burial. Later, he went to the hospital that had treated him. He checked the surveillance footage. He saw that a boy named Jiang Shun had taken it. He hinted to the boy that he wanted the watch back, but I pretended not to know anything. As we spent more time together, he gradually fell for me. He thought of giving me one last chance. He gave me 50,000 yuan, hoping that for the sake of the money, I would return the watch to him. But I avoided the topic. I gave the money to my sister in the countryside. When Qianyu gradually became disappointed, yet he couldn't let go of his growing feelings for me. So our relationship eventually turned into one where I suffered alone. Now, 3 years have passed. Every moment, I have been proving that I am not a greedy person, and his feelings for me have grown beyond mere liking. He hopes for a future with me, but he can never get past the issue of the watch. Anything his boyfriend wants, he can make it happen. But right now, I am still not worthy. On the other side, I was startled awake by the ringing phone. I looked at the clock, it was only 5 a.m. The caller ID showed a string of numbers. I recognized it as the number of my half-sister, Jiang Yao. Still groggy from being woken up, I hung up the call, but she called again. I hung up once more. She kept calling, forcing me completely awake. The phone kept vibrating. Afraid of disturbing my roommates, I got out of bed and went to the hallway. Jiang Yao, are you done yet? I already told you we have nothing to do with each other. I am not your brother. We haven't spoken in 3 years. If you're suddenly reaching out, it must be for something. Hello, this is Linchi Central Hospital. Your sister was beaten by a group of thugs last night. This morning, a kind passerby found her lying on the roadside and brought her to the hospital. Her condition is quite serious. Please come as soon as possible. The voice on the phone was a cold, middle-aged woman. She reported that Jiang Yao's situation was not looking good. I felt uneasy. I quickly got dressed and rushed back. It was still too early, so I could only take a long-distance bus. After 4 long hours, I finally arrived. When I got to the hospital, Jiang Yao's face was covered in bruises. Her cheeks were swollen, making it hard to recognize her original appearance. She was placed in a general ward, and for drip was attached to her hand. She had not woken up yet. A nurse noticed me and scolded me with displeasure. What kind of brother are you? Your sister didn't come home all night, and you didn't look for her? She tried calling you, but you didn't pick up. It was obvious now that the person who had called earlier was this nurse. Realizing her frustration, I apologized, saying I had been busy. The nurse clearly disapproved of me, but the word busy was an excuse too common in hospitals. After venting her frustration, she told me to go find the attending doctor quickly. The doctor was a middle-aged man. He held up the scans taken of Jiang Yao earlier. He said 3 ribs were broken. Her left forearm and right leg were fractured. Internal injuries could not be ruled out. Go pay the fees and complete the paperwork. Then I'll arrange for more detailed examinations. I nodded and went to settle the payment and paperwork. By the time I finished all the procedures and returned, Jiang Yao had already been taken for further test. Her phone was lying alone on the hospital bed. I picked up Jiang Yao's phone. It was the same phone she had received from our father 3 years ago when she started high school. After getting a new phone, she had given me the old one she was bored with. I had always been short on money, so I used it until now. The phone case was worn out and shabby, but the inside was clean. I unlocked Jiang Yao's phone and checked her contacts. There were only 3 contacts listed. Our deceased parents and me, not a single classmate. Her call history was just as simple. The most recent call was the one she made to me last night. The one before that was 3 years ago, an incoming call from me. That was when I sent her 50,000 yuan and called to cut ties with her. Thinking about Jiang Yao's battered face earlier, I was reminded of last night's call. She must have been badly beaten and desperately called me for help. A silent wave of sorrow welled up inside me. That idiot, why did she call me instead of an ambulance? Her phone's wallpaper was an old family photo from when we were still little. Back then, our family had just come together. Our stepmother was still kind to me. Father held me in his arms, while our stepmother carried a young Jiang Yao. I stared at the photo in a daze. Father was still young back then. He held my hand and told me, "This is your new mother. She will take care of you from now on." Back then, my stepmother looked so gentle and kind. But when she sent me away, she was just as ruthless. I didn't know how much time had passed before the nurse wheeled Jiang Yao back into the room. I comforted her and went to cook for her. Meanwhile, when Qianyu had only fallen asleep at dawn, when he woke up, it was already afternoon. He had planned to pick me up today. Hurriedly, he got up, changed, and left. He planned to buy a car that suited his current status, making commuting easier in the future. These past years, he had had enough of squeezing onto buses in front of me. He didn't want to take the subway anymore either. He had already chosen the model. It was an affordable car, around 100,000 yuan. He was just waiting until tomorrow to pick a color with me. Arriving at the university gate, when Qianyu called me, "Jiang Shun, I'm at the school entrance. Are you ready to come out now?" On the other end, I was busy skimming off the blood foam from a bone broth. Then I suddenly remembered we had agreed to go see the car tomorrow. I opened my mouth to tell him about Jiang Yao, but then I recalled that when Qianyu didn't like Jiang Yao, so I could only make an excuse and say that I might have to work tomorrow. I won't be able to go see the car. When Qianyu sounded dissatisfied, "You're working again? Didn't we agree you wouldn't take part-time jobs anymore?" I couldn't think of a good response immediately, so I made up a lie, saying Lin Feng had found a tutoring job. But since he was busy this week, he asked me to cover for him for 1 lesson. knowing that I was occupied and couldn't come. When Qianyu thought about it and didn't mind. At worst, he'd just bring Wen Xiaozhe along tomorrow to pick a color. Then he could surprise me with the final choice. Maybe that would be even better. Alright then, I'll head back first. When you're free, we'll go see the car together. When Qianyu was already used to me always having to work, he usually didn't interfere with my schedule. When Xiaozhe was in his second year of high school this year, his weekend break wouldn't start until the day after tomorrow, and I wouldn't be around. So, when Qianyu simply went back home, just in time for dinner. The four of them sat around the table and had a family meal. During dinner, his father was so happy that he took out a bottle of wine he had been saving for years and had a couple of drinks. At the table, Wen's mother watched over him warmly. A few days ago, I went out for tea. I ran into your step-uncle and his son. That young man is studying oil painting at Haida University. He's in his third year. If you don't have a boyfriend yet, in a few days, I'll arrange for you two to have a meal together. Get to know each other. When Xiaozhe immediately sensed something was off, he quickly spoke up to stop her. Mom, are you casually trying to sell my sister off? Stop setting her up on blind dates. My sister has a boyfriend. They've been together for almost 3 years now. When Qianyu shot a glare at Wen Xiaozhe, the 100,000 yuan she gave him a few days ago was wasted. It only took 2 days for him to sell her out. Upon hearing that their daughter had a boyfriend, Wen's mother became interested. Wen's father pretended to sip his drink, but he was actually eavesdropping. So, you really have a boyfriend? Why haven't you brought him home to meet us? What's with all the secrecy? We're not those overly traditional, conservative parents. When Qianyu let out a soft acknowledging that she had a boyfriend. He's also at Haida University. He's in his third year. Seeing that, when Qianyu wasn't angry. When Xiaozhe became even bolder and spilled everything he knew. Yeah, that guy is really great. Dad, you have no idea. At first, my sister pretended to be poor and even in debt. It was that guy who worked part-time to support her. He even helped her pay off her debt. Hearing this, Wen's father shook his head in disapproval. Wen's mother frowned at the story. This isn't right. Relationships should be built on honesty. You shouldn't have hidden your background and deceived him. This is someone you plan to spend your life with. He'll find out sooner or later. How is that guy supposed to react then? Making him suffer on purpose. Who would want to be deceived like that? With their parents on his side. When Xiaozhe continued embellishing the story, a few days ago, it was his birthday. And guess what? My sister actually took a free gift that came with my purchase and gave it to him. That guy still has no idea. He thinks my sister is really poor. This is just too much. Wen's father lectured her. If you're not being honest with him, and there's a gap in your hearts, you shouldn't force it. Nor should you deliberately be a burden on him. When Qianyu quickly defended herself. I'm sincere about him. When Xiaozhe didn't believe it, his sister needed to be taught a lesson. He was going to expose all her bad deeds to their parents. Let them set her straight. So she would treat her boyfriend better in the future. Alright, don't get upset. If our daughter is truly serious, then find an opportunity to bring him home to meet us. Wen's mother tried to calm her husband. She also felt that her daughter was in the wrong. How could you lie to him? When Qianyu let out a stifled things were moving faster than she had expected. She had originally planned to return the watch to me first, before introducing me to her parents. But now that when Xiaozhe had exposed everything, that plan would have to move forward sooner. Meanwhile, I stayed at the hospital, and Jiang Yao only woke up in the evening. She ate a little, but fell asleep again within minutes. Just as I stepped out, a nurse led me to a quieter hospital room. Inside stood 2 uniformed police officers and an older man. The nurse introduced me. This is Jiang Yao's brother. The older man politely introduced himself. Hello. I'm Jiang Yao's homeroom teacher. These 2 officers are in charge of investigating Jiang Yao's case. The circumstances of her attack are suspicious. Ordinary gang fights don't usually go this far. But her injuries are quite severe. It seems like she had a prior conflict with those thugs. The teacher briefly explained the situation. The school will, of course, protect its students. But Mr. Jiang, I hope you can ask Jiang Yao who attacked her, so we can cooperate with the police investigation. I nodded. Mr. Ma, the teacher, didn't stay much longer. As the officers stepped out, one of them suddenly turned back. We ran into each other again outside the hospital room. Mr. Jiang, I couldn't say this earlier in front of everyone, but something about Jiang Yao seems off. Peacock privately said he had seen him. Some people were coming and going on the river. Mr. Ma spoke rather tactfully, but from his facial expressions, I understood his meaning. I understand, Mr. Ma. I will ask him clearly about these things. Being involved in organized crime is different from being a thug. When Qianyu was woken up early in the morning by Wen Xiaoze, she drove Wen Xiaoze to school. Last night, thanks to Wen Xiaoze, who spared no effort in selling out his teammate, their parents found out about him and me. Dad called him to the study and gave him a harsh scolding. When Qianyu didn't tell their father the reason why she and I had been hiding our relationship, but their father said one thing that was true. If you truly want to be with him, then you should tell him clearly. The two of us should be together openly. After this scolding from her father, when Qianyu's mood actually improved, the invisible shadow in her heart was also lifted a lot. She gave up on that 100,000 yuan car and ordered the car I had been eyeing for a long time. She plans to find a chance in the next few days to talk to me. Once the car arrives, she will give it to me as a birthday gift. To make up for all the hardships I have endured over the years, after I graduate from my senior year, we will get engaged first, then enjoy 2 years of just the two of us, and find a suitable time to get married. On the way back after ordering the car, Wen Qianyu remembered she had bought a keychain a few days ago to give me, but she left it in the cabinet and forgot about it. When Qianyu thought about putting the car key on it in a few days, I would probably like that. She turned the car around and drove the Porsche to the rented old house. When Qianyu remembered she had left it there, she went back to get it. She remembered this item. Back then, she had deliberately placed it among my clothes, thinking that when I changed clothes, I would naturally see it. Who knew I hadn't noticed it all this time? Before marriage, she opened the wardrobe, looking for that keychain inside. I didn't have many clothes there, just a thin stack. She found it at the bottom. When Qianyu picked up the keychain and happened to see a black velvet bag pressed under my clothes in the corner of the wardrobe. It was the bag that his grandfather used to store his watch. When Qianyu's hands trembled, a bad feeling surged in his heart. He picked up the bag. The touch already told him that the bag was completely empty. But he still opened it, unwilling to give up hope. Inside was only a piece of paper. On it was written a receipt for a sale. Jiang Sheng had sold it, the keepsake that his grandmother had given to his grandfather, the only memory his grandfather had left him in this world. Jiang Sheng had just sold it like that, all for just a few 10,000 yuan. Meanwhile, at the police station, I learned the entire story. The person who had been following me was Jiang Yao's uncle. After Jiang Yao's parents passed away, he had been living alone in this house. His uncle had been working in business for years. His family was quite well off. He had once lent Jiang Yao's mother 200,000 yuan in an emergency. Later, after Jiang Yao's mother had an accident, his uncle took pity on Jiang Yao, so he put aside the matter of the 200,000 yuan debt. He told Jiang Yao to pay it back slowly after he got a job. For 3 years, while I was away from home, Jiang Yao's uncle often came to take care of him. Over time, he learned that the house was under Jiang Yao's name. In the second half of last year, his uncle's second son was about to start school. His wife instigated him, suggesting that Jiang Yao should transfer the house to his uncle's name. In exchange, the 200,000 yuan debt his mother owed would be erased. That way, his uncle could obtain a school district house quota, and Jiang Yao wouldn't have to repay the debt. But Jiang Yao refused. His uncle tried every way to persuade him, but it didn't work. He also knew that Jiang Yao was still underage. To transfer the property, a guardian had to be present. So his uncle waited until Jiang Yao turned 18. But Jiang Yao still refused, so he called some underworld friends to scare Jiang Yao. Who knew those men had no restraint? They scared Jiang Yao so badly that he ended up in the hospital. These past few days, his uncle had been too afraid to visit him in the hospital. Instead, he stayed around the house waiting for Jiang Yao to return. Who knew that when he saw me come back, he started following me, trying to persuade my uncle to convince Jiang Yao to sell the house. Today, he was waiting outside the house. I mistook him for a thug and gave him a serious beating on the spot. Now he's still in the hospital getting stitches. When Jiang Yao's aunt and her children arrived, they started screaming at me. The hospital called the police. It wasn't until the police arrived that they finally pulled us apart. The businessman was taken to the police station for questioning. Officer Chun, who was in charge of the investigation, took my statement. He combined the two cases and told me, Jiang Chun, I can't say much about your father's case, but Jiang Yao has changed a lot in these past few years. He has only 1 month left before the college entrance exam. I hope that, for the sake of your past siblings, you can help him at this critical moment. I didn't say anything, but suddenly recalled my own college entrance exam year. My exam center was within the school district of that house, but my stepmother refused to let me use the residence for my benefit. Those days, I was alone, staying at a cheap motel. Officer Chun saw I wasn't responding. He continued, his aunt is a troublemaker. If this escalates, it won't be good for anyone. I nodded. This all started because of the 200,000 yuan debt. Now, both sides have been injured. If his uncle's family keeps using this as an excuse to harass Jiang Yao, he won't be able to focus on his exam. But 200,000 yuan isn't something I can just pull out of thin air. Right now, I have no idea how to get that money. I kept calculating how to raise 200,000 yuan and secure a guarantor. But in truth, I had no obligation to pay this debt. Jiang Yao is already 18. That house is legally his property. I don't even need to worry about his college entrance exam. But right now, I need to get out of here. I don't have many contacts on my phone. My aunt, who lives miles away in my hometown, is out of the question. Jiang Yao, who I just added, is stuck in the hospital himself. And I'm not even sure if Wen Qianyu would come to help me. She works hard, and I hate to trouble her. I hesitated. Then my finger hovered over Wen Qianyu's contact. I dialed, and she rejected the call. I called again, and she hung up. I called, and she hung up. Over and over again. I was stuck in an endless loop. Trapped in a cycle I couldn't break. Usually, if I call for money, and you doesn't pick up, I wouldn't call a second time. I always hoped that I wouldn't disturb Wen Qianyu's work. An annoyed voice came through. But today, I kept calling until she finally answered. What do you want? Compared to her irritation, the interrogation room was too quiet. I wanted to get out of here even more. I went back home on Friday. After much deliberation, I decided to tell her everything. And then, you reunited with your sister. What do you need me for now? Of course, she already knew I had gone home. At this moment, Wen Qianyu only felt disgusted. I had sold the watch behind her back to help a younger brother who wasn't even related by blood. I wanted to tell her that I was detained, that no one was here to get me out. But her undisguised disgust gave me the sense that she was guarding herself against me, like she thought I was asking for money. Then, the image came to my mind. That afternoon, when she casually spent 100,000 yuan on her new boyfriend. But she once told me, we will never be apart. That last shred of hope in my heart was pinned on that sentence. I mustered the last bit of courage and said, Qianyu, I'm in a bit of trouble. Can you lend me some money? Think of the 2 years we spent together eating plain buns with free sugar water. Just a little. I'll pay you back bit by bit. Silence. Then, she laughed. A cold, mocking laugh. It was a tone I had heard my entire life, something that had been carved into my bones. I already knew the answer. I closed my eyes and said the number. 100,000. A scoff came through. Jiangsheng, why don't you just go beg on the streets? Then the call was cut off. All that was left was the beeping tone. But I didn't feel hurt. I should have accepted it long ago. All these years I've been alive. Not once has my effort ever been repaid. I wrapped myself up tightly. It was already past 1 a.m. I could only wait until morning to explain and leave. Blood trickled down my face, following the contours of my features. I wiped it off with my hand, staining my palm bright red. Footsteps sounded from outside. Officer Chun. He walked in. Jiang Chun, you can leave now. I nodded without asking anything. I followed behind Officer Chun. In the cold, empty hall stood a girl. One of her legs and an arm were in cast. She barely managed to support herself. With a crutch, waiting in the freezing hall. When she saw me come out, her swollen face broke into a bright, happy smile. Brother, I came to pick you up. At 1 a.m., I walked out of the police station. All the clinics were closed. Luckily, my external injuries weren't serious. I borrowed some water, used tissues to wipe the blood off my face, then helped Jiang Yao home. The hospital was too far. It was better to stay home for the night. Tomorrow, I take Jiang Yao back to the hospital. The moment I stepped inside, I whispered to myself, I'm home. Jiang Yao saw me dazing off, his heart filled with unease. Brother, I didn't mean to run out. I heard Anheyu. I was worried. I shook my head and went into the bathroom, washed my face, cleaned up, then carried out a basin of hot water for Jiang Yao to soak his feet. His uninjured leg was covered in mud. There was no need to ask. I already knew. He had hopped all the way to the police station on crutches. I'll do it myself. I want to take a bath. Jiang Yao was startled. He quickly refused my help, insisting on handling it himself. His foot had blisters from friction, and they had burst open. The dried blood stuck to the soles of his feet. He didn't want his brother to see. Jiang Yao didn't want me to notice. I didn't insist and got up. Heading to his room, I grabbed a clean set of clothes for him. After his shower, Jiang Yao lay down on the bed. When he saw me about to leave, he immediately sat up. Brother, don't go. Don't leave. Mom and Dad left. And then you left. I was the only one left here. Every time I closed my eyes, I saw your shadows everywhere in this house. I wanted to go with you. But in my dreams, you told me you hadn't left, and that I shouldn't leave either. For 3 years, he had suffered through endless torment. He knew I didn't like him, so he never dared to seek me out. All he could do was stay in this house, trapped within its walls, waiting for me to come back, even just once. He had no one left. The brother who once took care of him no longer wanted him. He had lost all will to live. I sighed softly. I'm not leaving. Jiang Yao beamed. His face was still streaked with tears and snot. Struggling, he shifted toward the inside of the bed, leaving space for me on the outside. Brother, don't worry about my uncle. After my exams, I'll get a job and pay him back. I won't let him trouble you anymore. He had heard from Officer Chun about everything that happened to me today. Jiang Yao only felt useless, like he had done nothing but drag me down. I hesitated before asking. Your uncle offered you an extra 500,000. Why are you still holding on to this house? In total, the house would have sold for 700,000. That's not much of a loss for a small town. You could have sold it, lived a more comfortable life. But now, your skin and bones. You even ended up with broken limbs. Jiang Yao shook his head. Then, realizing it was dark and I couldn't see, he choked up before finally speaking. Mom and Dad are gone. If we sell this house, we won't have a home anymore. Brother, no matter where you go, this will always be your home. I'll be waiting at home for you. Home. I don't have a home anymore. When Qianyu is gone too, I stopped talking, closed my eyes and pretended to sleep. When I opened my eyes again, Yao was already asleep. I got up, took my phone, and went to the bathroom. Called Song Mingyu, asked him to help request a 1-week leave from school for me. With everything going on, I can't leave. As for Wen Qian, after tonight, I don't blame him anymore. And I'm not sad either. My suffering has nothing to do with him. Other people's money gives them absolute control. I have no right to ask for anything. Looking at my disheveled self in the mirror. Hair messy, still stuck with cigar ash. My cheeks swollen red. The dark circles under my eyes reminded me of Wen Qianyu's new boyfriend. I murmured to myself, it's nothing. The wounds will heal. Everything will be fine. In the 5 years after I lost my mother, my father sent me back to my grandmother's house in the countryside. Even in my dreams, my deceased mother comforted me this way. Breakups, debts. Getting hurt, how much worse can it get? On the other side, when Qian went out drinking with his childhood friends at midnight, Shen Qiao sat beside him, not drinking. He just scrolled through short videos on his phone to kill time. Tomorrow is a work day. Between him and Wen Qian, at least one of them had to stay sober. Now that Wen Qianyu was trapped by his family, this chance to get drunk was given to him. Shen Qiao turned to Wen Qianyu and asked about Jiang Chun. Wen Qianyu straightened his back and placed his glass on the table. Then, he nodded. Shen Qiao couldn't understand. He and Jiang Chun were dating. Even his parents had accepted it. So what was he still struggling with? Jiang Chun sold that watch. After saying that, when Qianyu took a bitter sip of his drink, Shen Qiao thought he was just making a big deal out of nothing. Bringing misery upon yourself. Didn't you already suspect that he sold the watch? Why are you acting crazy now? I think you might as well just cut things off with him. Better a short pain than a long one. At least then you won't be reminded of the watch every time you see him. No more random outburst. The key point is, he doesn't even know why. Completely clueless. Hearing that made Wen Qianyu feel even worse. He just called me earlier to borrow money for his sister. Jiang Yao's mother owed his uncle 200,000 yuan before she died. Last year, the uncle came to collect the debt. Jiang Yao has been avoiding him. The past few days, Jiang Yao got beaten up by his uncle's men. He went back to his hometown over the weekend. I guess his brother must have played the victim, begging him for money. I know Jiang Chun is soft-hearted. He can't stand seeing people beg, so he took the burden upon himself. How much did he lend? Shen Qiao was curious. What kind of outrageous amount? Made Miss Wen even bring up the old watch issue again? When Qianyu responded calmly, 100,000. Shen Qiao was stunned. 100,000? Did you forget a zero? Did you give it to his brother or not? Young master Wen spends more than that just on pocket money, and yet he's making a fuss over this. Don't tell me he didn't give it. Otherwise, even I would feel bad for him. When Qianyu shook his head, no, this ridiculous world. If Wen Qianyu weren't his direct superior, Shen Qiao would have really wanted to throw Wen Qian into the water to wake him up. That's your own sibling. Don't forget, a few days ago, you bought your brother a toy. That cost 100,000. Shen Qiao felt that compared to Wen Qianyu. Wen Qianyu was being absolutely shameless. It left Shen Qiao in total awe. Complete surrender. Call me big sister. I don't get it. Is it about the watch? Or do you just not want to break up? For 3 years, you've kept him hanging, half alive. What exactly are you planning to do with him? Why don't you just break up already? Shen Qiao knew. For these 3 years, I've truly given my heart to Wen Qianyu. As far as he knows, this is the first time I've ever asked Wen Qianyu for anything. And it's just to borrow money. Money that I will return. It's not like I'm asking for pocket money as a couple. This guy is really unlucky. Having ended up with someone like Wen Qianyu. For 3 years, he saved so much money for you. Yet, look at you, he worked his sweat and blood to support you. Paid for your education so you could succeed. And now, when he asks to borrow money, you refuse. Think about the high cost of living in Heishi. The money he spent supporting you those 2 years must have been at least 80,000, if not 100,000. The more he spoke, the more frustrated he became. Shen Qiao felt like his head was burning. But he thought Wen Qianyu's mind was even more fried. Completely burnout. After realizing it, Wen Qianyu also felt miserable. Miserable because his suspicions had finally been confirmed. His grandmother's watch was gone forever. And miserable because he still couldn't bring himself to sever ties. He actually regretted it. If Jiang Shan were to call him one more time, he would give him the 100,000 as emergency funds. But until now, his phone remained silent. When Qianyu consoled himself if he really needed it urgently, he would call again. This time, he wouldn't put me in a difficult position. He would just borrow it. Since he hasn't called again, it must mean it's not that important. Shen Qiao suddenly grabbed something and held onto Wen Qianyu's arm. He asked, "Have you thought about how to deal with this? If you don't break up, sooner or later, he will find out that you are rich. And yet you weren't even willing to lend him money for a drink. What will you do then? Tonight's drinking alone has already cost more than 100,000, and yet you wouldn't lend him that." When Qianyu was at a loss. A long time ago, when he saw me hesitate to buy new clothes for myself because of him, he had already thought about this issue. On one hand, he was deliberately harsh with me over the watch. On the other, he was anxious that I might find out. Shen Qiao came to a conclusion this was a dead end. Break up? I asked my roommate to help request a week off from me. On Friday, I'm taking Jiang Yao to the hospital for a checkup. He was hospitalized for 2 days. Then I took a taxi back to school. Just as I arrived at the dormitory building, I looked up and saw Wen Qianyu standing outside. He has always been an attractive person, which drew the attention of many passing students who whispered among themselves. Some bold guys even went up to talk to him. When Qianyu shook his head and refused, he was facing the dormitory building, his back turned to me. The sky was getting dark. Everything around us became blurry. The streetlights hadn't turned on yet, but I recognized Wen Qianyu at a glance. He was waiting for me. That day, when I asked to borrow money, I was busy handling Jiang Yao's hospitalization. The police station had also contacted me several times for mediation. It was about Jiang Yao's uncle's debt dispute. Every time I faced his aunt's unreasonable accusations, I felt completely exhausted. Every day, I collapsed onto my bed to sleep. The moment I opened my eyes, I had to take care of Jiang Yao. I barely had any time to think about Wen Qianyu, and he never called me. Not even a single message on WeChat. I walked toward Wen Qianyu. He had always found it annoying when the dorm manager questioned him. He had never waited for me downstairs before. Because of me, he had a deep prejudice against Jiang Yao. So it made sense that he refused to lend me money. But since he was waiting for me today, maybe I should explain everything to him. With every step I took, a male student walked out of the dormitory. He was carrying a branded suitcase. When he saw Wen Qianyu, he waved and smiled at him. I stopped in my tracks. That student was Li Jibin, someone from my department. Back in freshman year, he worked on cultural exhibitions in the art gallery. He often donated his artwork for charity sales. He was famous in the oil painting department. Li Jibin also came from a wealthy family. His parents were from a well-known literary family in Heishi. The kind of people who could casually spend 100,000 on clothes. Li Jibin smiled at Wen Qianyu, leaning in as if whispering something. Wen Qianyu still had his back turned to me, took the luggage bag from Li Jibin's hands, walked along the road towards the school gate. The two walked side by side, chatting and laughing. They didn't notice me standing under the shadow of the tree. I followed them all the way out of Wen Qianyu, to the west gate where I often waited. passing by the snack street we once dined at. The two of them looked like noble young masters on a private visit, a delicate lady surrounded by the city, their world, where these earthly fireworks couldn't intrude. They reached the wide road. Lee Jibin, like a gentleman, escorted Wen Qianyu into the car, then got in from the other side himself. The car drove off in a swift motion. The black double M emblem was the same one from Wen Qianyu's laptop that day. I specifically came back to check that car. Maybach, I looked down at my basketball shoes. Accidentally stepped into dirty water. Turned around and walked back. Returned to the dormitory, unknowingly, due to the pain in my foot. I started walking differently. Looking up, I saw Song Mingyu showing off a new pair of AJs. Exactly like Lee Jibin's. Just in a different color. How are they? Look good. The latest limited edition release. Airshipped from the US. Cost over 80,000 yuan. I lowered my head and smiled. My shoes cost 50 yuan. Lee Jibin had no siblings. Wen Qianyu and he were a couple. Not brother and sister. Summer clothes had to be changed daily. I tend to sweat a lot. Only having the pieces of clothing in the dorm wasn't enough. Decided to call Wen Qianyu. Wanted to retrieve my clothes from the rented old house. No answer. The phone was turned off. Took the bus to the old house. The moment I opened the door, a rush of dust surged forward. I couldn't smell anything. Walked into the bedroom and started packing my clothes. I rarely stayed here overnight. There weren't many clothes or belongings. A medium-sized supermarket plastic bag was enough to fit everything. After packing up, I was ready to leave. Passing by the coffee table, I saw a bag placed on top. A black velvet surface, embroidered with a pair of mandarin ducks playing in the water. The velvet bag looked familiar. I couldn't recall where I had seen it before. Picked it up for a closer look. Inside, a jewelry store receipt brought back memories. This was what Wen Qianyu was holding during the car accident. Inside was a gold watch. Back then, Wen Qianyu was unconscious and needed emergency surgery. I had no money to pay for the medical expenses, so I sold the watch inside to cover his medical bills. Later, when Qianyu was transferred to another hospital, I kept the bag. I never saw him again, thinking I would explain everything to Wen Qianyu one day. But I missed the best time to explain. After we got together, both Wen Qianyu and I were too busy. Gradually, I forgot about it too. Now that the bag was on the coffee table, it meant that Wen Qianyu had seen it too. I picked up my phone and sent a WeChat message to Wen Qianyu. Asked to meet tomorrow. I needed to explain about the bag too, to avoid any misunderstanding about the gold watch. Wen Qianyu didn't reply, and I didn't press further. The next day, I went to the agreed meeting place to wait for Wen Qianyu. I waited until it was dark, but he never showed up. I gave up thinking about it. Maybe he never cared about it in the first place. Maybe he was afraid I'd bring up borrowing money again, so he deliberately avoided me. During the week, I informed the department head about Jiang Yao's injury, then requested a 1-week leave to go back and take care of Jiang Yao. Jiang Yao recovered quickly. After a few days in the hospital, he could be discharged to recover at home. His homeroom teacher, Mr. Ma from his school, brought his books over. Jiang Yao started studying at home. The police station mediated several times. Jiang Yao's uncle agreed to cancel out each other's injuries. It was agreed that neither Jiang Yao nor I would pursue the fight dispute, but the 200,000 yuan debt must be repaid as soon as possible. Otherwise, he would file a lawsuit after Jiang Yao's college entrance exam. This 200,000 yuan was not a small amount for me. After being with Wen Qianyu for 2 years, I barely had any savings. In the past 6 months, I had only managed to save 20,000 yuan. Originally, I planned to use this 20,000 yuan for my master's degree. Now, it seemed I couldn't keep it anymore. Jiang Yao returned the bank card I had given him before. There was still 40,000 yuan in it. Over 3 years, he only spent 10,000 yuan on tuition and living expenses. After gathering all my remaining funds, I was still short of 120,000 yuan. The debt belonged to Jiang Yao. He didn't want me to intervene, but within 2 days, a court summons was delivered. The trial date was set for the 3rd day after Jiang Yao's exam. His uncle was really willing to push Jiang Yao to the edge over a house. I felt helpless. In the morning, I made an excuse to go buy groceries and took my card with me. I had always kept this card with me. After I was sent to my grandmother's house, my father got me this bank card. Every now and then, he would transfer some living expenses into it. My grandmother had been keeping it from me. I didn't know. She only told me when she was on her deathbed. She said it was my father's last gesture of care. I never used it. By then, my father was already dead. I had sworn that I would never use a single cent of his money in my lifetime. Now, I was using it for his precious daughter. The total amount transferred over the years added up to 20,000 yuan. Still 100,000 yuan short. The scorching sun on the street made my vision blur. This 100,000 yuan was like a curse. I couldn't come up with it, and I couldn't escape it. On Friday afternoon, I returned to school at the same dormitory building entrance. But today, when Qianyu wasn't there, as I walked into the building, I ran into Li Jibin. My vision went black. I pressed my hand against the wall and slowly came to a stop, leaning against the wall, gasping for breath. Jiang, are you okay? Li Jibin saw me suddenly stop and lean against the wall, so he stepped forward to ask. We share the same surname. We had heard of each other but never interacted. We had seen each other in professional and public lectures, but I had never spoken a word to him. I waved my hand. I'm fine. Just a bit of low blood sugar. Li Jibin took out the milk candies from his pocket. Be careful with low blood sugar. Have some candy. It'll make you feel better. I glanced at the candy wrappers. The packaging was exquisite. Clearly, it was a luxury brand. Seeing that I didn't take them, Li Jibin quickly explained, this isn't some cheap brand. My girlfriend brought these back from France yesterday. It's not some random brand. It's well known in France. Not common here, but it tastes really good. Try it. For a moment, I couldn't tell if he was praising the candy or showing off how great his girlfriend was. His girlfriend, was he talking about Wen Qianyu? I felt dizzy. Leaning against the wall, it took me a long time to catch my breath. I had a girlfriend too. But why wasn't she half as good to me as Li Jibin's girlfriend? After finishing his words, Li Jibin shoved the candies into my hand, then dashed off. My girlfriend's here. Talk later. I felt weak, leaning against the wall. My eyes followed Li Jibin as he ran outside the dormitory. Under the streetlights outside, when Qianyu's figure appeared. After meeting up with Li Jibin, they walked side by side. He didn't see me. Or maybe he saw me, but pretended not to and didn't go upstairs. Forcing myself to stand, I went straight to the old house. Inside, just like last week, everything was covered in dust. It seemed that when Qianyu had never come back to stay. Of course, a rich young master like Li Jibin would never want to live in such an old place. I cleaned up for Wen Qianyu, then picked up my phone and called him. Still turned off. Suddenly, it hit me. Maybe Wen Qianyu had another phone number. Maybe that was the number he used for his normal social life. One that didn't include me. I spent the night at the old house. The air was thick with dust. It choked me, making me cough all night. Still, I endured it, not waiting, but foolishly hoping when Qianyu would return. Flashes of past moments came to mind. Me cooking in the kitchen, him cleaning the house, only to be replaced by the dust before me. When Qianyu never came back that night, and from the looks of it, he wouldn't be returning anytime soon. The weight of debt pressed on my mind, leaving me blank. I couldn't even think about where he and Li Jibin might have gone. I took off my key, placed it on the coffee table along with the 2 milk candies Li Jibin had given me. Then I got up and left. This wasn't my home anymore. After returning to school, I heard that an important guest was coming today. The benefactor of the High University Art Studio building. The dean and the head of the oil painting department would personally receive them. All the oil painting students' works were displayed in this building. The outstanding third-year student, Li Jibin, followed closely behind, introducing the gallery to the lady. Annie. Last time, my mother said she wanted to have dinner with you. I've been looking forward to it for a long time. Li Jibin followed the lady closely, his words filled with flattery. Sure, call your mother. Let's go have dinner together. The lady nodded in agreement. Since Wen Qianyu is free today, invite him along as well. Upon hearing this, Li Jibin immediately took out his phone and called Wen Qianyu. Qianyu. Annie said we're having dinner with my mom tonight. As Li Jibin walked away making the call, the lady turned to the dean. Dean, I actually came today to ask for a favor. The dean nodded. Madam, please go ahead. To be honest, my husband heard that there's a talented third-year student in the oil painting department, but unfortunately, he comes from a poor family. But due to financial difficulties, he specially invited me to meet him this time. My mother spoke up, stating her intention. The director understood immediately, knowing that it must be about Jiang Shun. He quickly led the way and invited Mrs. Wen to see my studio. Mr. Wen must be referring to Jiang Shun. This Jiangshun is the top painting student every year, and he is very talented. Unfortunately, his parents passed away in an accident just as he entered college, leaving him with a younger sister to support. For years, he has relied on scholarships and worked part-time jobs to earn a living. The department head opened the door to my studio. In front of them was an oil painting with a dazzling golden hue. Mature wheat stalks standing tall with their grains. The wheat awns were sharp. The sky was both gray and blue, as if on the verge of sunshine and gloom, waiting for the viewer to interpret the scene on their own. The painting at the entrance displayed its unique sharpness. Stepping closer, the texture of the brushstrokes softened the sharpness of the wheat awns. Two contrasting elements were harmoniously blended together. Mrs. Wen nodded, saying it was a good painting. The department head made a strong recommendation. If it weren't for his financial struggles, he would definitely surpass Li Jibin. If he could receive this lady's sponsorship, Jiangshun's future would be limitless. When I received the call and entered, I saw the department head acting like a matchmaker, passionately selling his goods, which was me. When he saw me, he immediately called me over. I walked in and greeted the dean and department head. "This is Mrs. Wen. Mrs. Wen appreciates your paintings." The department head subtly hinted for me to understand the situation. "Good day, Mrs. Wen." Mrs. Wen nodded. Her assistant handed me a business card. Then she asked a few questions about the art building and had the dean and department head step out, leaving only me and Mrs. Wen in the studio. Mrs. Wen focused intently on my painting. It was a piece I had created recently, inspired by a secluded path near the convenience store on my way back. The wheat ripened when Wen Qingyu and I met. Later, we often held hands and walked through vast wheat fields. Madam Wen praised the painting, saying it was very interesting. "Thank you, madam, for liking it." I politely expressed my gratitude. Madam Wen pointed her finger deep into the wheat field. "Could something else be added here?" As soon as she said that, I knew Madam Wen intended to buy the painting. Deep in the painting, there was a row of houses. Now, they have all been demolished. Originally, there was also a small path in the wheat field, but due to time constraints, I never painted it. Perhaps a little deer could roam in the distance. I sketched on the painting and asked Madam Wen, "What would you like to add, madam?" Madam Wen nodded and said, "In a few days. It would be my husband and my wedding anniversary. I want to give it to my husband as a gift." I quickly asked, "Do you have any photos of your husband, madam? If possible, I would like as many as you can provide." Madam nodded in agreement. She instructed her assistant to send the photos later. She also promised me a reward of 100,000 yuan. I couldn't pass up this opportunity. Originally, this was a painting I created for my graduation exhibition. It was meant to commemorate my encounter with Wen Qingyu. But precious memories, now in front of me, could no longer be more important than money. Madam Wen was very generous. She immediately paid me 100,000 yuan. Then, I spent day and night in my studio. Madam Wen sent many photos, from their newlywed days to now, as they walked through life together. From the pictures, I could tell they had endured many hardships together. Then, I called Jiang Yao. I told him to focus on his studies. I had already taken care of this matter. This 100,000 yuan was just enough to repay his uncle. After hanging up, I began painting from the photos of Madam Wen and her husband. Their business cards were also clipped to the drawing board. I walked around my studio, and soon, it was the 30th wedding anniversary of Wen's parents' banquet. The event would be held in the banquet hall on the top floor of a 6-star hotel. That day happened to be a weekend. Madam Wen asked me to bring the painting over. She also invited me to attend the event. After my teacher dropped me off, he left. As soon as I entered the hotel, I saw Wen Qingyu's hotel ambassador from a distance. Seeing me carrying a carefully wrapped package and wearing a t-shirt and jeans, without an invitation in hand, they assumed I was a staff member. They pointed me to a passage leading through the lobby to the service elevator in the back. At that moment, Li Jibin walked up behind Wen Qingyu, raising a hand to lightly pat her on the shoulder. "Good evening, Qingyu." Wen Qingyu smiled and nodded in greeting. The two of them together looked like a perfect couple. The sight sparked whispers among the guests. The banquet hall was illuminated by sparkling lights from the 10-meter-high ceiling. Dazzling crystal chandeliers hung down. The guests were dressed in exclusive attire, engaged in polite conversations. I had only ever seen such a scene in TV dramas. Now that it was happening in real life before my eyes, I wasn't as excited as I expected. But my eyes couldn't help but follow etiquette's movements. He was chatting with a few close friends ahead. Who would have thought you managed to capture the heart of Miss Wen? After some casual banter, one of his friends teased. His tone carried a hint of envy, but Li Jibing, who was without a boyfriend, denied it. The young man, like me, was a student at high university. They had been together for a long time. I found it amusing. So, he knew about his relationship with Wen Qingyu. Yet he still acted so open and righteous. He probably didn't know about my relationship with Wen Qingyu. I turned my back to them, completely unsurprised. Wen Qingyu was a wealthy heiress. I just couldn't understand why she had lied to me. Was it simply because she was afraid I would chase after money? I didn't want to listen anymore. When Qingyu and I had been in a cold war for so long, breaking up was already a reality. All that was left was to say it face to face. At this moment, another boy who was drinking chuckled, playing with the diamond-encrusted watch on his hand. Mockingly said, "I know. My girlfriend works with Miss Wen. 3 years ago, Miss Wen had a car accident. That boy saved her. But who knew that while Miss Wen was unconscious, he stole the gold watch left by Miss Wen's grandfather?" The people around gasped in surprise. Li Jibing also shook his head in disapproval. That's too greedy. He saved Miss Wen. Did he really think the Wen family wouldn't retaliate? A gold watch. How much could it be worth? You just don't understand. That poor guy has been poor all his life. He has a shallow mindset. He can't resist grabbing anything valuable he sees. The boy spoke smugly. But poverty is an incurable disease. I felt a chill all over. So, when Qianyu really minded the watch incident, then why didn't he ask me about it? The boy continued, Miss Wen is not stupid. She knew he loved money, so she pretended to be poor to make him take care of her. But in the end, that loser didn't even get a dime. He was just played by Miss Wen. Jibing, you better seize the opportunity. Miss Wen has been treating you well these past few days. You should make your move. Assets worth billions are no joke. I followed the staircase behind the hotel, step by step walking down. Scenes in my mind gradually became clearer. After we got together, we once went to the night market together. I liked a cup that cost 16 yuan. Haggled it down to 10 yuan. But when Qianyu said it was ugly and dragged me away, we were together for 3 years. Every holiday, the gifts when Qianyu gave me were all worthless trinkets. Back then, I just thought we were financially struggling, and he had medical bills to pay. Money was tight, so I never minded these small things. Turns out, it wasn't that. In the end, he was just guarding himself against me. He minded that watch. He would rather hold on to the misunderstanding than tell me. No wonder when he saw Song Mingyu's watch, his first reaction wasn't to ask who gave it to me, but to tell me to return it. So people wouldn't see through me. But shouldn't he, of all people, know me best? At that moment, I just wanted to rush down and find Wen Qianyu, to tell him that I was truly sorry about the watch, but I never stole it. The stairs' motion sensor light went out. I missed a step. I didn't have time to grab the railing, stumbling for several steps. I sat down on the stairs. The pain in my ankle sobered me up. There was nothing to explain to those wealthy people. Perhaps they only cared whether I sold the watch, not whether I was greedy or not. They had never experienced starving for 3 days, or the helplessness of not being able to afford medical bills. Why didn't I just tell him back then? Because I liked him. I was afraid he would look down on me for being poor. Later, our lives were too difficult. No matter how much I tried, I couldn't save up enough money to pay him back. So I treated him well all the time, without expecting anything in return. Amidst all the hardships, the warmth he gave me made me forget about the watch entirely. I had no parents. I was sensitive and insecure, terrified of being looked down upon. So I chose not to ask. And he never said that the watch was my fault, that I should return it. I stood up and carefully moved down step by step. When Qianyu arrived at the venue, his eyes searched for me. His mother had told him that I was invited today. He didn't see me downstairs, and now, he still couldn't see me. During this time, he seriously considered Shen Kuo's suggestion to temporarily break up with me unilaterally and cut off all contact with me. He deliberately didn't take that old phone. Whenever that phone ran out of battery, it would shut off. He didn't even realize he was the one who suggested Li Jibin. He was great. He had an artistic mindset just like mine. More importantly, there was no class gap between them, no financial pressure. He didn't have to worry about secrets being exposed. Being with him was often more comfortable. When Qianyu didn't feel any discomfort at all. But after the novelty wore off, when Li Jibin sat in front of him, sharing about his day shopping with friends and having afternoon tea, when Qianyu started to feel out of place, he realized he would rather hear me complain that vegetable prices at the market had gone up by 20 cents again. During this time, when Qianyu had a normal relationship, eating at restaurants that suited his status, taking walks in malls or gardens when he had free time. But when Li Jibin looked at him with admiration, when Qianyu suddenly realized this was not the kind of man he wanted. A man should have his own thoughts and convictions. In his eyes, Li Jibin gradually faded into nothingness. Misunderstanding. Only the version of me in your mind remains alive. At this moment, when Qianyu remembers that he often carried negative emotions and threw cheap trinkets at me, Shin Qiao said he was secretly interacting with other boys behind my back. That counts as cheating. Emotionally, he has already betrayed me. This cancels out the regret of the watch. From now on, he owes himself nothing. We are finally in an equal relationship, determined to leave the watch in the past. From now on, he will only be good to me. He knew I would bring flowers to my parents today, so he waited downstairs on purpose, hoping to confess to me first and ask for my forgiveness. I am so soft-hearted and easy to talk to. We have been through the hardest times in life together, and we share the most sincere love. I would definitely forgive him. He planned to formally introduce me to his parents today. Let everyone know that I am Wen Xinyu's boyfriend. He wanted me to know that in his eyes, 100,000 yuan is only worth throwing into the water for the sound. But I didn't come. Or maybe I did. But Wen Xinyu didn't find me. So what's the point? It's time to cut the cake. When Xiaozhe pulled the days when Qianyu over, the family of her cut the cake amidst everyone's blessings, and then tried to approach. Mrs. Wen handed the painting to her husband. An endless golden wheat field. The bold colors are striking. At first glance, it feels aggressive. But upon closer look, a sense of warmth emerges. A small path stretches into the distance through the wheat field. The silhouettes of a man and a woman walking forward. The image is abstract. With just a few strokes, a sense of movement is created. Yet the first reaction is unmistakably Wen Qianyu's. Parents. Old Wen, look. Mrs. Wen seemed to have discovered a secret, and showed it only to Mr. Wen. The golden wheat field. The sharp wheat spikes are skillfully avoided. Two children vaguely appear within, running towards the couple. This is their family of four. When Qianyu felt panicked I had been here, he watched as I painted this piece stroke by stroke. I said this was a treasure. Even if I became a world-famous artist, I would never sell it. But now, I changed the wheat field and sold it to his parents. I walked out of the hotel, standing at the entrance of a gold shop by the bustling street. The display windows showcased new and intricate designs, as well as many classic patterns. From the reflection in the glass, I saw my disheveled self. I saw the tears in my own reflection. I hadn't cried for a long time. My eyes hurt, Mom. I can't hold on anymore. I can't endure this. My heart feels heavy. The beliefs my mother instilled in me over the years were completely shattered by Wen Qianyu tonight. I feel so sad. Wen Qianyu is the young lady of Yang Group. I can't cling to him, nor can I take it out on him. I am unworthy, and I can't afford to offend him. I disappeared, and when Qianyu couldn't reach me, he picked up an old phone, charged it, and turned it on. Inside were hundreds of missed calls and unread messages from me. When Qianyu called back, but I didn't answer. Yet he kept looking for me. I hadn't shown up for class for several days, nor had I been seen leaving the dorm. When Qianyu had never formally met my roommates, yet he waited outside my dorm for several days, asking multiple students, until he finally found my roommates. The three of them were heading to the cafeteria together, chatting and laughing happily. But when they saw Wen Qianyu, they all stopped, their faces full of caution. What do you want? When Qianyu quickly spoke, classmates, I just want to ask what Jiangsheng has been up to lately. He actually wanted to ask where I was, but was afraid they'd realize he couldn't find me. Not wanting my roommates to misunderstand our relationship, Songming and Shizudao, we can't say that carelessly. Li Jibin's girlfriend is now showing concern for our Jiangsheng. If this spreads, Jiangsheng's reputation will be ruined. How is Jiangsheng supposed to live with this? The other two roommates also took a step back, When Qianyu had picked up Li Jibin a few times. Plus, Li Jibin once gave out French imported caramel candies from Wen Qianyu. Without hesitation, he called himself Wen Qianyu's boyfriend. People who didn't know might have thought it was wedding candy. Poor Jiang Sheng, that idiot. 3 years together. Yet in just half a month, his name was completely overshadowed. He was reduced to being known as Li Jibin's ex, not even worthy of a name. After saying this, the three of them didn't want to argue further. Lin Feng reminded them, the restaurant is out of braised ribs. As they passed by Wen Qianyu, they threw him a scornful look. The more Lin Feng thought about it, the sadder he felt. Even the braised ribs had lost their taste. Let's bring some food back for Jiang Sheng. He's been living off free soup and steamed buns these past few days. He only eats 1 bun a day. He really can't keep going like this. Song Ming sneered. That poor guy has too much pride. If you bring him food, he might not even eat it. Besides, do you even know if he's coming back today? Just eat your own meal. Lin Feng and Luo Hao sighed. He hasn't come back for 3 days. 4 a.m. City center. I moved the last crate of liquor behind the bar and stacked it neatly, then wiped down the bar counter with a cloth. Tonight, some customers had too much fun. They stayed until this late. I rubbed my shoulders, getting ready to leave through the back door of the bar. The alleyway smelled terrible. The streetlights were dim. I walked carefully, trying not to step on anything disgusting. I had taken a 1-month leave from school, spending my days in my teacher's art studio, and working nights in a bar's kitchen in the city center. By the end of the month, I could earn nearly 20,000 yuan. A high-income city meant high expenses. The only thing I could do was minimize my spending, saving up all my earnings. I must return Wen Qianyu's watch. I won't let this 10,000 yuan from Wen's mother define me. If necessary, I will pay it back to her as well. At 5:30 a.m., the dormitory was still locked. These days, I've been resting in a small rental near the art studio. Tonight is no different. I leaned against the frosted glass wall, hugging myself to sleep. My phone was filled with countless calls and messages from Wen Qianyu. I didn't read a single one. I set my alarm and fell asleep. My teacher allowed me 1 day off per week. If I make it through today, tomorrow, I can finally sleep properly in my dorm bed. The alarm went off precisely at 7:30 a.m. I got up and bought 3 steamed buns nearby, borrowed the shop owner's faucet to wash my face, then headed to the art studio for class. At 6 p.m., when class ended, I had to go to my night shift at the bar. When Qianyu completely lost track of me, my roommates refused to tell him anything. Calls and messages were ignored. Even waiting outside the dorm didn't help. He finally approached my department head. That's when he found out my younger sister had an accident, and that I had taken a month off to take care of her, which meant I wouldn't return to school until after summer break. He then asked the department head for my family's address, and drove there himself. It was an old residential area, where my father had left us a house. Now, it was officially in my name. He once considered helping me reclaim it, but since he had to keep his identity hidden, he never took action. When Qianyu sat in his car, staring blankly at my window, Yao came outside to buy groceries. Why isn't your brother around today? Not far away. A middle-aged man was helping an injured girl walk. She had 1 leg and 1 arm in a cast, supporting herself with crutches, hopping forward with difficulty, struggling to take each step. This should be my younger sister. When Qianyu frowned deeply, Jiang Yao smiled brightly without a hint of gloom. Sorry, my brother is busy with school matters. He won't be coming over these days. The middle-aged man shook his head. He sighed at the hardships of the siblings. He advised, you must study hard. In the future, when you earn money, repay your brother. He's just a student, and it's not easy for him. He even paid off your 200,000 debt. It's really rare to meet such a kind person. He nodded at the profile picture, as if swearing an oath. I know, she said, as the two went upstairs together. They disappeared from Wen Qianyu's sight. When Qianyu felt a sharp pain in her heart, he despised the actions of his stepsister's family. He wanted me to stay away from him too. Adding to that, the anger over Grandpa's watch. That's why he refused to lend me that 100,000. He wanted my stepsister to realize I had no money left for them to squeeze from me. But he forgot. Since I was willing to ask for a loan, I would definitely take care of my sister. She must be somewhere in JINGCHENG. Working hard to earn money. He's not at school or home. Where is he? The middle-aged man who had just sent Jiang Yao upstairs was preparing to go home. Seeing this, when Yu hurriedly got out of the car and chased after him. Tonight, the bar was exceptionally crowded. I carried crates of liquor, running back and forth between the kitchen storage and the bar counter. I didn't stop all night. When Yu was on the second floor, leaning against the glass railing, watching the bustling crowd below, he knew that working in such an environment, whether male or female, it was easy to go astray. Although the money came fast, he dared not even think about where I got the 200,000 to pay off my sister's debt. I am in Heishi. I haven't returned to school for days. I've been staying outside. Did I meet someone else who treated me well, who helped me pay off this debt? I always repay kindness. When Yu didn't dare to think, afraid that I would go astray and suffer grievances, even more afraid that I had someone else's help. The atmosphere on the second floor gradually became livelier. When Yu never once looked at Li Jibing, making his friends feel a little awkward, Li Jibing decided to take the initiative and went over to talk to Wang Qianyu. Sister Qianyu, why do you look unhappy? If something's wrong, tell me. I'll help you find a way. Li Jibing tried to understand her thoughts and get closer to her. When Qianyu shook her head without answering, her eyes followed a figure at the bar. That figure moved busily among the crowd around the bar, carrying trays diligently. Could it be him? When Qianyu, are you giving your boyfriend the cold shoulder? If so, you'll be punished to sleep in the guest room tonight. Someone joked. Another quickly changed the subject. When Qianyu neither minded nor responded, her eyes were still fixed on the bar. That figure looked very much like him. But the dazzling lights downstairs made it hard to see his real face. After several trips back and forth, my back ached from carrying loads. I returned to the storage room for a break, sitting on a small chair, reading a book, avoiding Wang Qianyu. He was already annoyed, and then was misunderstood about his relationship with Li Jibing. His frustration only grew. He called the driver to pick him up, left the car keys behind and got up to leave. The next day, when Qianyu went to the west gate of Haida University again, it was just school dismissal time. Couples walked out hand in hand, discussing what to eat for dinner. He watched them. A sense of envy arose in his heart. They were deeply affectionate, but few couples lasted until graduation. Yet at this moment, he truly envied them. There were no records of my spending, nor did I stay at any hotel. He couldn't find out where I was. My roommates were guarding against him. They didn't tell him my real situation. Something must have happened to him. He must be hiding somewhere and enduring it alone. When Qianyu walked through the west gate of Haida University, heading towards my dormitory building, people around were whispering, talking about Li Jibing's girlfriend. When Qianyu felt a pang of guilt. Could he have found out about me and Li Jibing? Did he see us together? Did he misunderstand our relationship? Was he angry and jealous, avoiding me on purpose? Would this lead to our breakup? The unanswered calls and unread WeChat messages. When Qianyu didn't even dare to look at our chat history. Now, he was too afraid to send me messages. Afraid of seeing the red exclamation mark from being blocked. I don't care if you laugh and chat with others. Just don't ever come looking for me again. A couple walked past. The girl stomped off angrily, leaving the boy behind. I have nothing to do with him. I don't even know him. The boy quickly followed, pleading for forgiveness. He just asked me about my outfit. He wanted to buy the same for his boyfriend. I don't believe you. You must have feelings for someone else. You don't love me anymore. The girl's voice gradually faded away. When Qianyu suddenly panicked, he had to find me. He had to explain the situation with Li Jibing. It couldn't end like this. I went to the back to throw out the trash. Not far away, I heard someone crying. The man wanted to break up. The woman sobbed, begging him to stay, asking if he had another woman. Scenes like this were common on bar streets. How foolish. I scoffed indifferently. I had grown numb to it. I wouldn't even glance at such scenes anymore. But something felt different today. The man was nowhere to be seen. The woman was acting out a one-person drama, crying and laughing at the same time. Drunk, she stumbled right into me. She fell on her own, got up like a ghost and walked deeper into the alley. I returned to the back kitchen, noticing something strange had stained my t-shirt. I went to the restroom to wash it off. The water that flowed down was red blood. That girl had touched me earlier. The blood must have come from her hands. There was only one possibility for blood on her hands. She had tried to harm herself. The bar called an ambulance. I was sent to escort her to the hospital. The hospital was brightly lit. In the emergency room, the girl kept struggling and refused to cooperate. The doctor, left with no choice, gave her a sedative. She finally calmed down. At this moment, she lay on the hospital bed, her empty eyes staring at the bright white light above. I sat on the couch beside her, thinking how luxurious the life of the wealthy was. A VIP hospital room, a private bathroom, floor-to-ceiling windows, a beautiful view. Even the companion bed was spacious. "Can I contact your family?" I asked. "I have work early tomorrow morning. I need to leave soon." But the girl didn't seem to hear me at all. Time passed slowly. She kept staring ahead, not saying a word. Suddenly, a faint voice came from the hospital bed. It trembled, on the verge of breaking down. She said something, but I didn't catch it. It took me a moment to react. She wanted someone to comfort her. After a long silence, I finally spoke. "I'm not good with words. I can't say nice things or comfort people well. But I've had it worse than you. At least you have money. You got hurt, yet you're in such a nice hospital room. I don't even know where my next meal will come from. You're not poor. Stop lying." She didn't believe me. It's understandable for young people to be broke. But at least you only have to feed yourself. You work at a bar. Your salary can't be that miserable. I didn't want to explain, but in the darkness, eager to find an outlet for venting. When I was a freshman in college, my dad and stepmother passed away unexpectedly. They left their only house to the sister my stepmother brought into the family. I relied on a scholarship to study, so I started working early. I had a girlfriend. She had a car accident, and I happened to pass by and saved her life. 2 years ago, she was hospitalized and borrowed some money. We struggled to pay off the debt together. At the beginning of this year, she said the debt was paid off. I thought life should gradually get better. But then, as women naturally love stories, that girl wanted to know if life had indeed improved. One day at the mall, I saw her swipe a card for 100,000 yuan for a guy. Meanwhile, I had just been haggling over the price of a chicken for her at the market. That day was my birthday. She took the free gift from that guy's purchase and gave it to me as my birthday present. I was struggling financially and needed money. I was detained at the police station. I asked her for money. She told me to go beg. Killing someone emotionally is no different from killing physically. Later, I found out she actually came from a wealthy family. She was dating a male student from our department. That student had competed with me for years in theater roles, and for the first place scholarship. When Qian Yu knew about Li Jibing, I had talked about him in front of her more than once. Li Jibing didn't even have a scholarship. It was just the price of a new outfit for him. Without a scholarship, I might have had to take a break from school. At best, things would stay as they are now. Working an extra job myself. The girl tested him. "You don't sound as sad. Even if I cry out in pain and call for my mother, what good does it do? The debt won't shrink just because I feel sad. Sadness is for others to see. But since no one is watching, why should I be sad?" 3 years together, and I couldn't even get Qian Yu to believe in my character. Despair and suffocation were cured by debt. A heart that remains cold is not something I will try to warm again. I just hope to pay off my debts as soon as possible. Start over. "Then why haven't you broken up yet? Keeping him around for the new year," the girl said angrily as I continued. There were still some things I needed to confirm. "Let's end everything when we meet again." The girl suddenly understood. "Brother, just let it go. You are such a good person. There are still many good girls waiting for you in the future." I smiled and said, "The sadness is real, but seeing things clearly now is also real. It's just that from that moment on, when Qian Yu planted wild weeds in my heart, they grew recklessly, disturbing my mind. I didn't bring up the breakup, not because I couldn't let go of what I had given before, but because I was looking for a way to eradicate the problem at its root. This is what Qian Yu owes me. I want to return to a state of mind free from distractions, not the broken and wounded self I am now. Girl, you're only in sophomore year of high school. When you're discharged tomorrow, go home and apologize to your parents. You still have a warm family waiting for you. Everything can start over." The girl remained silent for a long time. Then, in a choked voice, she said, "My parents, they won't forgive me. I did so many things to hurt them, just to be with him. But how can biological parents hold grudges overnight?" I continued. "I used to think my dad hurt me the most. I thought life was meaningless. But just a few days ago, I found out that my dad had lost a lot of money in business deals just to bring me back. He didn't want me to be in debt too. So he transferred the house to my stepsister Jiang Yao. When Jiang Yao was injured, Chen Jingwan summoned my uncle to investigate the whole story. Only then did I realize how much a middle-aged man had struggled just to bring his son back home. But things didn't go as he wished. His lack of ability led only to failure. He could only teach Jiang Yao from a young age. Your brother will always be your family. You must always get along with him in the future. So, Jiang Yao would rather be beaten to death than sell that house. But if I hadn't gone back, I would have never known. Brother, are you asleep? He couldn't sleep. He wanted to hear me talk. A voice came from the other side. I snapped out of my thoughts. Let's not talk about the past. Filial piety isn't necessarily a bad thing. Some good things have happened too. Tonight, I brought a newcomer, and because of you, I have a bed to sleep in. I don't have to share space with the ATM machine. I spoke lightly, so I should thank you. The ATM machine always reminds me to handle transactions. Honestly, it's really noisy. I could never sleep well. I was always afraid someone would need to use it, and I'd be in the way, and I'd get kicked out. The girl's name was Sun Zhaoxiao. At 5 a.m., she called her friend. Her friend rushed over anxiously. I had just finished washing up and was about to leave. When I looked up, oh, it was a familiar face. Brother, was it you who saved Zhao Xiao? When Xiao Zhe had just stepped in, he saw me walking out of the restroom and instinctively called out. I smiled awkwardly in response, then took out my phone and added Sun Zhaoxiao on WeChat. When someone wants to end their life, no matter how many times you try to stop them, it's hard to prevent. But if you think life has no meaning, why not come see my world? After experiencing life's hardships, you'll realize that just having food to eat and being alive is a blessing. I didn't greet Wen Xiaoze. I just got up and left. I was still wearing the same black t-shirt from yesterday. It was stained with dark brown marks. I hadn't dared to wash it last night. I was afraid it wouldn't dry by morning, and I wouldn't be able to wear it. Now, I had to go back to my dorm to change. Before heading to the art studio, just ran into Wen Qianyu head-on. Wen Qianyu never expected that the man she had been searching for would appear here so suddenly and unexpectedly. Wen Xiaoze was extremely excited. It was this brother who saved Zhao. Little Wen Xiaoze excitedly told Wen Qianyu that Zhao Xiao had just briefly told him what happened. Yesterday, he was overwhelmed with sadness and lost hope. Fortunately, this brother happened to pass by and saved him. I'm not exaggerating. With a distant tone, he said, I have something to do. I'm leaving now. After saying that, he bypassed Wen Qianyu and left. The world is neither too small nor too big. Despite the huge gap in our social class, we still managed to meet. Wen Qianyu didn't step into the house. Instead, she followed me outside. Sun Zhaoxiao looked puzzled. When Xiaoze explained, Zhaoxiao, that was my sister's boyfriend. He saved my sister's life before. Later, they got together, and he even took care of her for 2 years. Your sister's boyfriend? Sun Zhaoxiao couldn't believe it. Isn't that the guy from the story? The one about the unfaithful woman? When Xiaoze, oblivious, nodded affirmatively. Yes, and now he saved you too. He really is my benefactor. Sun Zhaoxiao remained silent. She hesitated, wondering whether to tell Wen Xiaoze the truth. When Qianyu followed me out of the hospital room, in the hallway, she grabbed my wrist and asked, Jiangchun, what have you been up to lately? I called you, but you never answered. I've been looking for you for so long, and now that I finally see you, why are you leaving without saying a word? I calmly replied, I've been working part-time lately. I'm not allowed to have my phone with me. When Qianyu already knew the answer, it wasn't just about not being allowed to have a phone at work. It was that after work, he didn't want to be found. He still didn't want to come back. Thinking about how she had deliberately ignored Jiangchun before, when Qianyu felt guilty, she didn't want to argue over phone calls anymore. So she dropped the subject. Just as she was about to speak, she noticed the clothes I was wearing today. Isn't this the uniform of the bar staff from last night? When Qianyu frowned and asked, are you working at a bar? I didn't deny it. I wanted to hear what Wen Qianyu would say next. Would she scold me for making money in a place like that? Or lecture me about how I shouldn't be there? That people would look down on me? But to my surprise, Wen Qianyu didn't say a word. She was extremely frustrated inside. She couldn't believe she hadn't recognized Jiangchun yesterday. The elevator arrived. I stepped in. Wen Qianyu followed me inside. You've been working there this whole time? Is it because of that 100,000 from last time? Last time, I was wrong. Don't worry. Whoever you borrowed from, I'll pay it back for you. I didn't explain much. No, I didn't borrow money. When Qianyu was relieved, she knew that if I said no, then it must be true. Then don't work there anymore. That place is too messy. I'll give you my secondary bank card. Just focus on your studies from now on. Stop working part-time, okay? I waved my hand and refused. No need. I wasn't planning to do this for long anyway. If I quit now, then I won't get paid for the work I've already done. After spending time with students recently, I feel like being a teacher might be a good option. So I've decided to give up on graduate school. I'll take the teacher's exam and go back home to teach. A big city like Heishi isn't suitable for someone like me who lacks ambition. When Qianyu's heart ached as she spoke, forget that job. We don't need it. Jiangshun, listen to me. Let's not work there anymore. No matter what you want to do in the future, I'll support you. Let's start a studio together. Just don't do that kind of job anymore. When Qianyu reached out to hug me, I took a step back. I have blood on me. It'd be bad if I stain your clothes. The elevator reached the first floor. I walked toward the exit. When Qianyu grabbed my arm, Jiangshun, wait a second. I'll drive you home. But I suddenly stopped moving. A strange smile appeared on my face, as if mocking myself, or maybe mocking him. No need. When your car is too expensive. If I get it dirty, I can't afford to pay for it. When Qianyu felt a chill through her body, she stood frozen. She understood now. I walked for a long time. I reached the bus stop. The first bus wouldn't arrive until 6:30. When Qianyu didn't drive away. Instead, she followed me, staying at a distance, waiting for the bus. Neither of us spoke along the way. When Qianyu wanted to find a topic to talk to me about, but I was completely withdrawn. In my eyes, he didn't even exist. Every time when Qianyu tried to speak, I gave indifferent and distant responses. When Qianyu wanted to explain everything, but after thinking about it for a long time, he couldn't find the words. We arrived at Ximen Station. I found it ridiculous that I had to avoid when Qianyu like this. We were together for 3 years, and yet, in the end, I had to sneak around to avoid suspicion. One wrong move, and I'd be labeled as the third party. When Qianyu stayed at Ximen Station, waiting for me, I went back to my dorm. My roommates were still asleep. I changed my clothes. Then I deliberately took a detour, leaving through the east gate to go to the art studio. At 8 p.m., I arrived at the bar for work as scheduled. I thought when Qianyu might follow me, but I didn't expect him to arrive even earlier than me. Tonight, when Qianyu booked the entire bar, there were no other guests. Since he booked the place, he was a VIP tonight. Whatever he requested, the owner would fulfill. So, when the owner learned that when Qianyu was here for me, he personally came to ask me to meet him. Jiangshun, a guest is looking for you. The boss is asking for you personally. I stood up helplessly. In the front hall, when Qianyu sat alone in the very center, a glass of water was placed on the table. He was no longer the struggling worker he used to be. Now, he exuded an air of natural superiority. Years of living in privilege had given him an unapproachable aura. It was my first time seeing this side of him. Before leaving, the boss gave me a look, as if telling me to seize the opportunity. I treated Wen Qianyu like just another ordinary customer. Miss Wen, you called me here, what can I do for you? When Qianyu looked a bit troubled. I just wanted to talk to you. I put on my most professional fake smile. You're the guest? If you want to chat, of course, that's fine. When Qianyu stood up and pulled me toward the second floor, let's talk upstairs so we don't disturb the boss's business. The boss nodded, then ordered a few people to guard the staircase. After that, he signaled the security to open for business. When Qianyu looked at me and said, Jiangshun, I waited for you at the gate today. In the morning, you didn't show up. I thought maybe you were just tired. So at noon, I prepared a meal for you. I even asked a classmate from our department to bring it up to your dorm. That's when I found out you had left early for work. You were gone since morning. This realization made when Qianyu feel ashamed. In a normal relationship, a boyfriend wouldn't have to work so hard, working day and night just to survive. Yet, despite all his wealth, he had never let Jiangshun enjoy even a cent of it. I sat still, silent, unmoving. Seeing this, when Qianyu felt even more miserable. Jiangshun, it was wrong of me to hide my identity from you. I owe you an apology. If you blame me for lying to you, you can hit me, scold me, whatever you want. But don't just stay silent, and don't disappear on me. I shook my head and replied calmly, I don't blame you. These things were always yours to begin with. Who you choose to be friends with is your own choice. Hearing this, when Qianyu felt even more hurt. Wasn't this just his way of cutting ties with him? When Qianyu choked up, I would rather you blame me. Just don't be like this. It doesn't matter, Jiangshun. Whatever you say today, I'll accept. But you can't just cut me off like this. We've been together for 3 years. From the moment he was with me, he had never considered the possibility of breaking up. I looked at Wen Qianyu for a moment before speaking. Fine. Then tell me, why did you hide your identity when approaching me? When I called you back then, where were you? What were you doing? Who were you with? Wen Qianyu froze. These were the questions he couldn't answer. Otherwise, it would mean the inevitable collapse of everything. When Qianyu tried to shift the focus, everything before was my fault. Jiangshan, please believe me. I will make it up to you. Can't we just let the past go? I ignored him. When Qianyu quickly added, just think of it as getting to know me again. I won't lie to you anymore. But since I didn't get the answer I wanted, disappointment flooded over me. I felt drained of all my strength. When Qianyu looked at me uneasily. From the beginning, he had never felt secure in this relationship. While he obsessed over that watch, he also feared the moment I would find out who he really was. He listened to Shen Qiao's bad advice. He forced himself to forget me for a while and sought another path. Yet he feared even more that I would see right through him. Besides anxiety, there was an even deeper emptiness inside him. No other man, no matter how similar, could fill that void. A poor but determined boy wasn't worthy of his love. Only Jiang Shun was. We once suffered together. Now, we should share happiness too. From his position as Wen Qianyu, he knew how rare someone like me was. Jiangshun, I will treat you well. We will never be apart again.
Thank you so much for watching this video. If you enjoyed it or found it helpful, please don't forget to like, subscribe to NiceGamLii channel, and hit the notification bell so you won't miss any new content. Your support is a huge motivation for me to keep creating better videos. Once again, thank you so much and see you in the next video.